Chapter 81. The bell rings to set a new record. Early the next morning, his mental energy had fully recovered. He casually summoned 4 more skeleton warriors, bringing his total to 120. After a quick wash, he used a teleportation stone to go from the dormitory to the dungeon hall. The hall was as lively as ever. Dozens of professionals had set up stalls in the market area, looking to form parties. There were ordinary academy students mingled among them, and many from Hakka Academy. Both types were part of Xiajing Academy, but they were quite different. Ordinary students mostly got in by passing the academy's entrance exams. The composition of each college within Xiajing was more complicated. Some students were trained internally by the colleges themselves. Those students often came from influential families, had superior bloodlines, and received abundant resources from an early age. At the same age, they far outpaced ordinary students in strength. When others were just taking the entrance exams, they were already level 20 or higher. As a result, they tended to be haughty, and many looked down on the regular students. Like Ling Zhen, even national champions, people like Lin Moyu, looked down on him. At Xiajing Academy, that was hardly surprising. Historically, those who came in as national or provincial 667 champions tended to be behind their peers at first. They'd started late, their levels lagged, their knowledge was thinner, and their gear and skill specs weren't as polished. The only thing they usually had going for them was profession rank. It often took 2 or 3 years before some of them caught up, learned what they needed to learn, upgraded their equipment, and rose to the top of their colleges. The rest stayed ordinary. The academy separated prodigies from everyone else. Lin Moyu understood that instantly and didn't care. It didn't affect his progression, and he'd never been one to rely on a team anyway. He preferred to do things alone. He entered the dungeon hall and walked straight to the spider lair entrance. The cooldown had just finished, which saved him 40 points. He selected the nightmare difficulty for the instance and stepped in. The skeletal warrior stepped forward into the tunnel. These were familiar routes, familiar caverns. The map hadn't changed since he'd been here last. It was fixed. Because of that, a full sprint through the dungeon was possible. If he'd pushed it, 20 minutes might have been enough. Lin Moyu scrolled through the calculations in his head, keeping a mental bottom line. In the end, he didn't choose an all-out speed run. Instead, he optimized the route. He skipped the far-flung branches of the maze and chose the nearer caverns, then used the skeletons to bait and funnel every spider into those chambers. That way, he could snag most of the experience while cutting out a lot of wasted travel. By his estimate, the farming speed would nearly double. The run would take at most 50 minutes, and he'd collect roughly 70% of the available experience, a huge efficiency gain. It was the plan he'd worked out the night before. He felt confident there shouldn't be any surprises. Lin Moyu followed the team of skeletons, watching them periodically draw off swarms of spiders. Explosions and the crack of bones on stone sounded from time to time, echoing through the spider nests as the traps and skirmishes played out. Experience points kept piling up. Halfway through the run, Lin Moyu felt the familiar surge of a level up. His body briefly gleamed as the upgrade completed. It had been part of his plan. At the end of his meditation, he spent 80% of his mental energy to summon 4 skeleton warriors, knowing the upgrade would finish mid-run and that his mental reserves would be fully restored afterwards. He'd already summoned those 4. He didn't call any more. He needed to conserve his remaining mental strength for the final boss. Yesterday, the Spider King had managed to injure his summons, and that couldn't happen again. The upgraded skeletons were markedly stronger. Their 4-dimensional attribute had climbed to 6,200, and their attack power had increased accordingly. Combined with Lin Moyu's corpse burst ability, they would tear through anything in their path. In less than 40 minutes, the party reached the end of the dungeon. The skeletons shredded the thick spiderweb that blocked the way and exposed a narrow tunnel beyond. Through that passage waited the Spider King. Lin Moyu didn't rush forward. He slipped into a small alcove nearby and waited, keeping his focus sharp. Click, click, click. The sound grew denser, closer. Alongside the clatter of skeleton soldiers, a skittering chorus of insects filled the air. A few skeletal warriors ran forward, and behind them came thousands of tiny spiders, swarming down the passage toward the Spider King. If I can just lure those little spiders close to the Spider King, Lin Moyu thought. If that worked, he could unleash Corpse Burst and basically kill the Spider King outright. It was a brilliant plan, until it wasn't. The little spiders stopped dead at the entrance to the spider den, clearly terrified of the Spider King's breath. They refused to go any farther. Lin Moyu cursed under his breath. The tactic had failed, at least here in the spider den. He let a flicker of soul flame flare up instead, and several violent explosions followed. The small spiders gathered at the doorway were wiped out in an instant. Lin Moyu stepped through and summoned every skeleton under his command. 120 skeleton warriors, each with their 4 primary attributes up around 6,200, swept forward, swords raised. If the Spider King had any sense, it should have been petrified at the sight. But the Spider King only opened its monstrous maw and spat a web, then unleashed its own powers. Soul Flame, it bellowed. Slow Curse. Lin Moyu released 2 skills in quick succession. The Spider King screamed in terror before it could even spit a web. The skeleton warriors didn't swarm its body. Instead, they converged on its legs. 15 skeletons had been dispatched and were spread evenly among the spider's limbs. Not too many, not too few, each set hammering at a single target point. The broadsword's red light pulsed as Lin Moyu activated Frenzied Strike. The Spider King howled as the armor around its legs was sheared away, exposing raw flesh and blood. All the while, Lin Moyu's soul flame burned without pause. The continuous spiritual assault left the Spider King no chance to use its own skills. The Spider King's spirit resistance was weak, and the soul flame was devastating. So far, Lin Moyu had not met a creature that could withstand that kind of ethereal attack. It hit the spirit directly, bypassing conventional defenses and proving extremely hard to resist. The skeletons surrounded the exposed legs and pounded mercilessly, striking again and again at virtually the same spots until the enemy was thoroughly overwhelmed. With a thunderous crack, the Spider King's legs were severed and its massive body collapsed to the floor. It offered no resistance, worse than the last time. It screamed and trembled as swarms of tiny spiders spilled out from every seam. Die faster, Lin Moyu muttered. The little spiders triggered a chain of explosions. The Corpse Burst, a divine technique, detonated through the mass, and the Spider King was annihilated in under 2 minutes. There was nothing good left on the carcass. The baby spiders themselves were weak, but there were too many of them. Lin Moyu had burned through nearly half of his mental power to finish the fight that quickly. He felt the expenditure was wasteful, so much energy for barely a minute saved. He could have used that power to summon 2 more skeleton warriors instead. After all, he only had 120 skeletons at the moment. The summoning space still showed 190 empty slots, and he could personally fill another 70 of them. As he stood there, the bell in the dungeon hall began to toll. Doors swung open and people from outside streamed in. Record breaking always drew a crowd. Rumors raced through out the dungeon hall like wildfire. Another record's been broken. Which boss this time? Someone asked. I don't even know which dungeon he ran, another replied. Hundreds of people shoved into the hall and stared up at the glowing light curtain. The projected image resolved into the familiar map icon and a title, Spider's Lair. It's a level 20 instance, someone said. No way it's that guy from yesterday. Don't be so sure, another voice murmured. I saw him go in this morning. A new entry blinked onto the curtain. The old first place slipped down 1 slot, and a new record crowned the top. Lin Moyu, level 19 Necromancer, 4722. Wow. It's really him. Yesterday he smashed the record in the mutant forest, and today it's the Spider's Lair? The scary part is he did it solo. How did he manage that? Are necromancers that powerful? I don't think it's just the class. He's probably talented. A low, incredulous hiss ran through the crowd. In their eyes, a truly gifted player was a rare thing, the kind of talent that only showed up a handful of times each year. That talented professional line is bullshit. He's just lucky, someone sneered, bitterness clear in their voice. The remark drew attention. At once, hundreds of eyes swung toward Ling Zhen. Chapter 82. That look. He really means business. Being stared at by so many people made Ling Zhen visibly uncomfortable. A voice from the crowd cut through the silence. "Student, why would you say that?" Breaking a record wasn't easy, especially a record set in a solo dungeon. It was even harder to do it alone. Someone else muttered, wondering aloud whether Lin Moyu had just gotten lucky. Ling Zhen sneered. "He's just an ordinary student who only just finished the big exam. Because of his connection to Master Baishan, who knows what powerful artifact he got. Otherwise, how could a single person possibly create a nightmare dungeon?" he added, his tone dripping with disdain. An angry retort came immediately. "What's wrong with being an ordinary student? Ordinary students can't set records now?" Another voice demanded, "So you're saying Lin Moyu only did it because Master Baishan gave him a treasure? Where's your proof?" A third speaker recognized Ling Zhen and called him out. "I know you, Ling Zhen from Qianlong Academy. No wonder you look down on us ordinary students. Qianlong started first and thinks they own the place, but you never know who's going to be the best in the end." Ling Zhen's remarks set the crowd off. Voices rose, accusations flew back and forth, and the atmosphere became chaotic as people argued over whether Lin Moyu's achievement was legitimate or bought. Until now, ordinary students and the Academy's hand-picked students had kept their differences mostly under the surface. No one had openly brought it up. Then Ling Zhen spoke, and that single remark set off a hornet's nest. The ordinary students erupted. They bristled at the implication that only the Academy's students were worthy. Many of the so-called ordinary students had been officially recognized by the Academic Affairs Office and were qualified to enter the dungeon hall. They'd done extremely well on the major exams, and their majors were nothing to scoff at. True, they might not have been as polished as the school-trained recruits at first, but with time, the gap would narrow, and many of them would eventually overtake those early favored students. In the eyes of many outstanding ordinary students, the Academy's chosen candidates weren't so special after all. The Academy students, of course, rallied to their own side and felt that Ling Zhen's point had merit. Voices rose, insults were exchanged, taunts flew back and forth, tempers flared, and it almost came to blows. Then, with a flash of light, Lin Moyu stepped forward onto the platform to intervene. A roar of arguing filled his ears. For a moment, Lin Moyu couldn't make sense of it. Then someone grabbed his sleeve. "Student Lin Moyu," the student demanded, "did you just finish the national exams this year?" Lin Moyu nodded. "Yes." "And your rank?" "Number 1 in the nation," he said plainly. There was a stunned silence, then a ripple of whispers. The Academy students were the most surprised. They tended to look down on ordinary schools, but a national champion was different. A first-place scholar was a rare thing, one whose fundamentals were iron-strong and whose talent couldn't be ignored. Even if a champion arrived less polished than Academy students at first, give them a few years and many of them caught up or even surpassed those who had the best resources. It wasn't something to scoff at. Ling Zhen, tall and arrogant, merely sneered. "What's so special about being the nation's top scorer? Do you really think you compare to us?" "That's not fair," someone near him snapped. "You can't just dismiss a national champion. They train hard, and their skills are solid. Many of them overtake Academy students in time. Don't underestimate him. If you grew up outside and only joined the Academy a week before the big exam, there's no way you can win the national championship." Everyone nodded at that. Even the Academy students had to agree. It was just the way things were. Lin Moyu finally understood what they meant. He had been pushed too far by Ling Zhen. He looked up at Ling Zhen with a cold, murderous glare. "I said, if you mess with me again, I'll kill you." Ling Zhen blinked at the intensity of the look. "You think I'm scared of you? Who do you think you are?" Lin Moyu didn't back down. He held that look, a warning so sharp that if they had been outside the Academy grounds, he probably would have acted on it already. Someone nearby who caught that stare couldn't help but shiver. Ignoring the murmurs, Lin Moyu turned and stepped back into the spider's lair instance. As he left, a hand patted the wall where he'd been standing. "Man," someone said, "with a look like that, he'd really kill you. And not just 1 or 2 people," another added. "Don't make it sound so grim," a voice protested. "He's only a new student who just finished his exam. How could he actually kill someone?" Do you think the outside world is that simple? Came the dry reply, and the conversation shifted as they watched Lin Moyu disappear into the dungeon. You grew up sheltered by the academy. The outside world is dangerous. I'm telling you, he's killed people, more than a few. The way he looks at someone, it's like he's sizing up a monster in a dungeon. He doesn't see you as a person at all. That look, it's terrifying. Ling Zhen felt the chill of those words. It was Lin Moyu's gaze that frightened him the most. When Lin Moyu looked at him, it wasn't as if he were a person. He seemed like some creature that could be struck down at any moment. Thinking about Lin Moyu's terrifyingly powerful frame, Ling Zhen's legs trembled. He didn't want to lose face back home, though, so he forced himself to sound brave. "Humph, don't let me run into you out in the wild, or I'll kill you," he snapped, then activated his teleportation stone and left. As the teleportation haze cleared, laughter rippled through the dungeon hall. "Ha, he's scared." You could hear it in his parting words, all show, no substance. It's pointless to be so timid. What a disgrace. This is the kind of genius the academy turns out. The academy students all felt the sting of embarrassment. None of them spoke up. One of them, in particular, was quietly seething with hatred for Lin Moyu. It had been Lin who'd made them look bad. Put him on the blacklist, he thought, never group with him in a dungeon again. They were just leaving the dungeon hall to start recruiting a new team when the bell chimed again. "What now?" someone grumbled. "A new record?" "It has to be Lin Moyu," another answered. "He did the same thing yesterday in the Mutant Forest run. I was there. First he set the record, then he beat his own time. Nobody knew of any item or skill that would let someone solo a nightmare-class dungeon and post such a terrifying time." The people who had just left hurried back inside. When the holographic display updated, their jaws dropped open. It read, "Lin Moyu, level 19 Necromancer, 22 minutes 51 seconds. That wasn't just impressive anymore. It was frightening. A chill ran through everyone. He cleared the nightmare dungeon alone in just 22 minutes and 51 seconds. Nobody could believe it. Whispers ran through the crowd. "That's impossible. How did he do it so fast?" "Is something wrong with the dungeon hall?" another voice asked. "What nonsense," scoffed someone else. "Even if the man's brain is fried, the dungeon hall wouldn't be. It's been running for years without a single problem." "Then how did he manage it? Go ask him." "I won't. His eyes are terrifying." At that moment, Lin Moyu appeared at the entrance to the instance. Without hesitation, he stepped into the dungeon again. Inside, he glanced at his experience bar. Rank 19, 74%, only 26% left to level up. Because he'd rushed the run and ignored many of the smaller spiders to keep the time down, he'd earned very little experience on the way. Still, this clear would push him over the line. A new record notice flashed. He'd broken the previous best and once again claimed the bonus, 1,000 points and 5 contribution points. The announcement rolled through the spider nest like a persistent roar. Lin Moyu walked forward, the summoned skeleton warriors pacing at his heels. The cavernous nest stretched ahead, buzzing with the aftermath of the record-breaking run. He tightened his grip and led his undead escort deeper into the gloom. By the time he reached the boss's door, a white light had already enveloped Lin Moyu. He'd leveled up. He finally hit level 20. Lin Moyu let out a long breath. Few people in the world must level up this fast, he thought. He'd cleared 127 nightmare-level dungeons by himself. The efficiency was staggering. Still, the thought of needing level 30 to enter the Creation Theological Academy nagged at him, and suddenly he felt behind again. He knew that after 20, the rate of progression would slow, but by how much he couldn't say. He'd have to keep playing to find out. At level 10, his skills had shifted after the upgrade. His talent and both of his skeleton summoning abilities had changed. He couldn't tell yet whether anything had altered this time, but he was eager to find out. Opening his character sheet, he checked his stats and skills, heart beating with anticipation. Name, occupation, Necromancer, unique, level 20, 1%. Stats, power 300, agility 300, C 1300, physique 320. Equipment, Goblin King's Magic Book, Robe of Knowledge, Summoning Space 120-200, Skeleton Warrior, quantity 120. Talent, comprehensive amplification, level 3 uniqueness. All skill effects are increased by 30 times. Passive skill, damage transfer. All damage the wizard would take is borne by the summoned entities. Active skills, soul flame, level 20. Burns the target's soul, dealing continuous burning damage. Damage scales with the user's spiritual power and skill level. Summon skeleton warrior, level 20. Summons a silver rank skeleton warrior. Corpse burst, level 2. Detonates a corpse, dealing damage equal to 15% of the corpse's HP to enemies within 2 meters. Slow curse, level 1. Curses an enemy within 5 meters, reducing their movement speed by 5% for 1 minute. Lin Moyu stared at the status window, reading the numbers and descriptions again. He had expected changes. He knew the Goblin King's magic book and the robe of knowledge would alter him, but seeing it laid out so plainly still hit him with a jolt. Comprehensive amplification at level 3, 30 times. His mind raced, trying to imagine what a 30-fold increase meant for Soul Flame and every other skill he had. The passive damage transfer made that thought worse and more complicated. Every blow aimed at him would be absorbed by his summons. His summoning space was already teeming. 120 skeleton warriors out of a 200 capacity, each one a potential shield. He took a breath and let the information settle. The numbers were concrete now, not just a vague promise of power. With these changes came opportunity and responsibility. Chapter 83. The boss who was almost instantly killed. God-level talent. Comprehensive increase. It was Lin Moyu's most important ability, the source of his strength, and it had just leveled up. The overall enhancement talent hit level 3, and the multiplier jumped from 20 times to 30 times. That was far from trivial. The effects showed up across the board. Soul Flame, originally a devastating single-target skill, would now hit 30 times harder. At that scale, the attack became terrifying. Not only could it shred individual enemies, it could also interrupt boss skills, a game-changing advantage in any fight. Corpse Explosion had also been boosted. It remained at level 2, but its radius extended to 60 meters. 60 meters was no small area. The explosion dealt 405% of a corpse's vitality and damage, the equivalent of 4.5 times the corpse's life. If several identical monsters were detonated together, the fallout would be catastrophic. No creature could hope to withstand such a blast. Slow Curse benefited as well. Its effective range expanded to 150 meters, and its deceleration effect was listed at 150% with a maximum duration of 30 minutes. In practice, that amount of slow would cripple, if not outright immobilize, whatever it touched for a very long time. Finally, Lin Moyu switched on the Skeleton Warrior attributes. The skill had reached level 20. The Skeleton Warrior upgraded from Bronze rank to Silver rank. Lin Moyu looked over the new numbers and felt the shift in potential. With these upgrades, his summons and area effects were far deadlier, his crowd control more absolute, and even singular strikes could now threaten bosses. The battlefield had just become much more one-sided, and he was the one holding the advantage. The attributes had definitely jumped. At level 19, the Skeleton Warrior's 4 primary stats had been pushed up. The display showed a combined value of 6,200 after the increase, but the actual base value was only 310. In other words, they weren't spectacular, just about on par with ordinary wild monsters. Still, quantity matters. With dozens of skeletons swarming a single target, even without special talents, they could easily handle most wild foes. It might just slow them down, but they could do it. A silver-white skeleton warrior materialized in front of him. Slightly above the bronze rank, it gave off a pale, metallic sheen. Its bones were smoother, without the rough, ragged look of the lower-ranked skeletons. The broadsword it held was neatly forged, sharp and intact, no longer a tattered scrap. Everything about it said, "I'm stronger now." The status readout confirmed it. Silver-rank skeleton warrior power, 12,000. Agility, 12,000. Intellect, 12,000. Physique, 12,000. Skill, Berserk Strike level 2. Berserk Strike level 2 deals 300% damage to the target. Cooldown, 10 minutes. When Lin Moyu saw those numbers, a cold numbness ran through him. I surprised myself again. The display read 4D 12,000 points, over 5 digits. My base attribute was only 400, not particularly high, but the real strength lay in my talent. A question popped into my head. How much energy did it take to summon a silver rank skeleton warrior? If leveling up boosted attributes, did it also raise consumption? I decided to find out and summoned one. My mental power plunged instantly. It had been 1 through 320 and dropped to 820, a 500-point cost. My eyebrows lifted without me realizing it. That was a lot. Looks like I needed gear to raise mental power. Only 2 summons could be active at once, and the summoning slots had to be filled. I didn't understand why there was a limit, but it was what it was. At level 20, I could already equip silver gear, so I decided to check the exchange for suitable silver items. I also needed to buy primary skill scrolls. When I hit level 20, I'd have to learn a new batch of skills. Right now, the silver rank skeleton warrior, its attributes greatly boosted, was slicing through the spiderwebbing in quick, ruthless bursts. Then, without hesitation, it rushed forward. The spider Kai, Nang braced himself as the skeleton warriors slammed forward. Lin Moyu didn't move. He wanted to test the strength of the silver-ranked skeleton. Spit net! The Spider King hissed, and a massive web hurtled down from above. Lin expected the skeleton to be trapped, but instead several skeletons suddenly leapt into the air, slashing with their huge blades. With a faint tearing sound, the web shredded. One silver-ranked skeleton burst through the tattered net and kept surging toward the Spider King. It moved with a new lightness. Lin's eyes narrowed. "It's getting faster," he murmured. "It seems to have gained some sort of spirit. The battle instinct has woken." Where it had once hacked away on pure force, the silver skeleton now adapted to the situation, adjusting its attacks rather than just swinging blindly. If that was true, then gold and platinum-ranked skeletons might eventually fight like real warriors, close to professionals. The Spider King spat out web after web, but the skeleton cut through each one with ease. At silver rank, the skeleton warrior was no longer the same mindless enemy it had been. Not only had their attributes skyrocketed, their combat awareness had sharpened as well. In an instant, the skeleton warriors swarmed to the Spider King's feet. Their silver knives flared red as they struck for his thighs. Skill, Crazy Strike, appeared above them. Strength plus 12,000, plus a 300% attack bonus. It was the very definition of a berserk assault. A crimson light filled the cavern. The Spider King's legs were cut away as if he were only a vegetable being sliced. He screamed and collapsed. Another group of skeletons triggered their skills in turn, and a huge blade descended to finish him off. Kill the Spider King, experience 190, obtained silver rank weapon Spider Staff, obtained low-level monster crystal nucleus. Spider Dagger, silver rank, spirit plus 40, constitution 40, mage skill power 8%, usable at level 20. Lin Moyu froze, stunned. Was that it? The skeletons had unleashed a flurry of skills, and in under 10 seconds, the once formidable Dosmos lay dead. The Spider King, a dignified, feared adversary, had been felled so quickly that it hardly seemed possible. Facing a silver-ranked skeleton warrior spider with a 4-dimensional attribute rating of 12,000, he couldn't even summon his younger brother. It was that fast. Lin Moyu checked his experience and stared in disbelief. 190,000 XP from that fight, and his progress bar only moved by 0.2%. Levels climb much more slowly after 20. Going from 20 to 30 can easily take a year at best, and 2 or 3 years at worst, with progress slowing even further after 25. No wonder the Creation Theological Academy requires level 30. Anyone who can hit 30 quickly is truly powerful. His sister, who entered the academy just months after enrolling, was an even rarer case of talent. Lin Moyu didn't linger in the dungeon hall. He used a teleportation stone to return to the dormitory, then headed out to the exchanges. The Imperial Exchange and the Academy Exchange stood side by side, slightly different in appearance, but clearly part of the same unified architectural style. The two exchanges were connected, and students simply called the whole place the Transaction Center. Lin Moyu stopped first at the Shuifu Exchange. The stall was filled with items, but everything there was bought and sold with points. The big difference from the Imperial Exchange was that Shuifu didn't have a recycling service. You could put items on consignment, but you couldn't sell them directly to the exchange. He found several tasks on the board, mostly material collection jobs. Lin turned in the materials he'd gathered and received 150 points for the task, a common way for students to top up their point balance. After that, he went over to the Imperial Exchange and recycled the rest of his loot there. He didn't bother with consigning. The price gap wasn't worth the trouble of tracking market values, and with his dungeon-running skills, he figured he could just run 2 more runs and make more. The haul included a few silver-grade weapons and pieces of armor, several bronze items, and a pile of miscellaneous materials. Recycling them brought in 430,000 gold coins. After the exchange, his holdings stood at 610,000 gold coins and 135,000 points. After completing 2 transactions, his points didn't go down, they actually increased. Lin Moyu searched the Imperial Exchange for the equipment he needed, but couldn't find it. In the end, he spent 600,000 gold coins to buy 6 primary skill scrolls. 6? That probably won't be enough. To be safe, he checked the school exchange. The same primary skill scrolls were available there for 800 points each. Even at an exchange rate of 1 point to 100 gold coins, 800 points would be worth only 80,000 gold coins, far cheaper in points than the Imperial Exchange price. That gap in value highlighted how much stronger the purchasing power of points could be, and it wasn't limited to skill scrolls. Many other items showed the same discrepancy. After a moment's thought, Lin Moyu bought another 10 primary skill scrolls, spending 8,000 points. 16 should be about right. With that done, he moved on to browse other items. Some pieces of equipment didn't appear in the Imperial Exchange at all, like the silver-ranked weapon he had seen earlier. The weapon wasn't a dungeon drop at all, but a piece of work from a craftsman. The spiritual long sword had been forged by a professional blacksmith named Zhang Tai. In the game's terms, a blacksmith is an auxiliary profession, someone who produces the weapons and armor other classes need. Item details read plainly on the blade. Spiritual longsword, silver rank, spirit plus 400, usable at level 20 and above, manufacturer Wangjiao, Zhang Tai. Set 1 piece of the spiritual 3-piece set. The sword offered no skill bonuses, only a raw plus 400 to spirit. That made it weaker in overall utility than some other top silver weapons. For example, the best silver staff raises spirit by only plus 200, but also boosts mage class skills by 15%, a combination that's more practical for most spellcasters. The spiritual longsword was different. It was the sort of item a specialist would pick. A support mage like a prophet, someone who relies on huge pools of mental power to sustain casting, might prefer a single massive spirit boost over skill modifiers. Lin Moyu liked it for that reason. His own spirit stat already sat at 1300. Equipping the sword would push him up to 1700. A dramatic increase in raw mana and exactly the kind of edge he wanted. Summoning a skeleton warrior costs 500 points of mental power. Normally, he could only maintain 2 skeletons at once, but this spirit sword increases that limit by 1, allowing a third to be called forth. On top of that, greater mental strength speeds meditation recovery and improves overall efficiency. Most importantly, Lin Moyu's soul flame skill scales with spiritual power. The more spiritual power he has, the stronger the skill becomes. Raising his mental power effectively boosts all of his abilities, so this sword suits him far better than the other silver weapons. The spirit sword was priced at 3,000 points, slightly more than the typical silver-level armaments, but not by much. Lin Moyu had no second thoughts and bought it immediately. Chapter 84. People are stupid and have a lot of money. New magical skills. A gleaming silver-white longsword materialized in his hand, and Lin Moyu felt his spiritual attribute spike to 1,700. A current of energy flowed from the sword into his body. If he held it and used his soul flame, the flame's power would be greatly amplified. He glanced at his points. In just 2 minutes he had spent 10,000, leaving 125,000. That sounded like a lot, but it wouldn't go far here. Gold-tier weapons and equipment cost tens of thousands of points, and his entire balance would barely buy a single piece. With a spiritual attribute of only 1,700, he still didn't have the strength he wanted. He searched for armor. The next item was a mage's robe. Spirit robe, silver grade, spiritual power plus 200, usable from level 20. Manufacturer Zhang Tai. Description: one piece of the Spirit 3-piece set. Lin Moyu frowned and read it again. These pieces, made by the same craftsman, all carried the same name and all did the same thing. They boosted the spiritual attribute. That wasn't surprising. What caught his attention was the designation. It was explicitly one piece of the Spirit Trio. "This is a set piece," he murmured, a little surprised. Back in high school, when he'd learned the basics of weapons and equipment, Lin Moyu had read about item sets. Sets were extremely rare. If you collected every piece, you unlocked additional bonuses. The spiritual robe in the exchange cost 2,000 points, a bit cheaper than a weapon of the same tier, but more expensive than a silver-level armor. He bought it without a second thought. Points weren't something he worried about right now. If you had spare points on hand, it made sense to spend them. With a thought, the spiritual robe materialized on his body, replacing his old basic robe. His mental power shot up to 1,900. Lin Moyu checked the item's attributes and realized the set bonus hadn't activated. One piece was still missing from the spiritual 3-piece set. He opened the exchange and used the search function. It quickly found the matching item: spiritual ring, silver level. Mental power plus 200, usable at level 20 and above. Manufacturer Zhang Tai. Description: one piece of the spiritual 3-piece set. Price: 5,000 points. Extremely expensive. The set's price was far higher than any other silver jewelry in the exchange. Lin Moyu didn't care. He wanted the complete set, so he bought it and put it on immediately. The moment the last piece settled, a faint, silvery glow pulsed from him. Heads turned across the hall. Is that the glow of a suit? Someone actually assembled the set? Silver white light. It's a silver tier suit. What silver tier suits? I've never heard of any like that. You forgot the artisan set, didn't you? You mean the one that only raises spirit? That relic that's been sitting on the exchange for more than 2 years? No way. Someone actually bought that? You'd have to be crazy or loaded. They all eyed Lin Moyu like he'd lost his mind. Spending a full 10,000 points on a silver set that offered no skill bonuses, only a spirit increase, seemed foolish to them. High spirit might sound nice, but it didn't boost skill damage the way skill bonuses or higher tier equipment could. For most mages, spirit barely affected the power of their spells. They never understood Lin Moyu, but he didn't need them to. As soon as he slipped on the spirit ring, his spirit stat jumped to 2,100, far outstripping his other attributes. Then he noticed the set bonus. The 3-piece spirit set, sword, robe, and ring, granted an additional 800 spirit. Since the ring itself had already given plus 800, the combined boost from those spirit items was plus 1,600, bringing his spirit up to 2,900. Worth every one of the 10,000 points he had spent, Lin Moyu thought. He left the trading center beneath a chorus of odd, curious stares, saying nothing the whole way out. Still, a small smile of satisfaction played at the corner of his mouth. What a weirdo, someone muttered. He blows all those points on gear that only raises spirit, and he's so happy. Maybe he just likes how it looks, another replied. I saw his spirit robe and the long sword a moment ago. It looks really good, someone admired. What's the point of looks? We want power, another scoffed. Can pretty faces charm the boss? I don't care about money right now, a third chimed in. If I got 10,000 points, that'd be amazing. My golden weapon is almost worth that much. After leaving the exchange, Lin Moyu headed straight for the skill training hall. The school maintained a special training facility where a formation master was hired to set up protective and enhancing formations. Supposedly, the hall could not only speed up skill practice, but also raise the chance of awakening a skill. Whether that rumor was true or not, nobody could say for sure, but plenty of people still preferred to use their skill scrolls inside the hall. Lin Moyu figured it was better to try than not, so he wasn't exempt from the crowd's thinking. The training hall itself was tiered, primary, intermediate, and advanced, similar to the dungeon system. Both level requirements and points were needed for entry. At level 20, Lin Moyu could only access the primary hall. It cost 100 points for 1 hour of training there. Now he understood why most students practiced outside despite the empty training halls. The fees were steep. The elementary hall charged 100 points per hour. The intermediate hall cost 1,000 points an hour, and the advanced hall demanded 10,000 points. Ning Yi had even mentioned higher-tier training halls with better conditions, but those were closed to the public. Lin Moyu paid the fee and entered an elementary training hall. It was an independent room roughly 30 meters across, neither large nor cramped, and equipped with several cultivation devices. The atmosphere inside felt noticeably different, charged in a way that made the air itself seem more conducive to recovery. He summoned a skeleton warrior with his recently upgraded skill, which drained 500 points of his mental power. After the recent exchange, his reserves had only recovered a little. The normal recovery outside was painfully slow. In the hall, however, his mental power began to regenerate almost as quickly as it would if he were meditating. If he had chosen to meditate inside the training hall, the recovery rate would accelerate several times over. Lin Moyu realized he didn't need to worry about running out of mental power while practicing. He could meditate to recover it quickly, which would let him train much faster. If he summoned skeleton warriors and then meditated to restore his mana, he could keep recruiting them non-stop, he thought. It was a good idea in theory, but now was not the time to summon skeletons. He took out a primary skill scroll and activated it. The parchment flared into a sphere of light and wrapped around him, turning him into a bright orb in the middle of the training hall. After a while, the glow faded, and nothing happened. No new skill. The scroll had failed. Lin Moyu wasn't surprised. Skill awakenings were notoriously fickle. Ning Yi had once told him about an unlucky player who, at level 30, had spent 300 primary scrolls before managing to awaken all skills under the second rank. Compared to that, one failure was nothing. He told himself not to be discouraged and tried another scroll. The second activation produced a different effect. The light blossomed again, but this time the cluster was made up of thousands of tiny points, like a field of miniature stars, beautiful and dazzling in the quiet hall. Lin Moyu's mind drifted back to simpler times. Nights on the roof with his sister, gazing up at a sky full of stars, and making wishes on shooting stars. Grandma would bring them snacks and fruit. It was a lovely, cherished time. A light snapped him back to the present. One of the stars flared, sending a beam straight into him. A message appeared in his head. Acquired skill, skeleton armor. Skeleton armor, level 1. Summon bones to 4M armor, granting 100 points of physical defense for 5 minutes. Can be cast on others. He thought, Necromancer is a mage class. Even though he didn't have typical mage gear, mages share protective skills, necromancers included. Bone armor, then. 100 points of physique-based defense didn't sound like much, but with the global multiplier he was under, the value was multiplied 30-fold. That turned the 100 into 3,000 points of physical defense. In other words, this was the kind of defensive power a humanoid boss would have. Facing level 20 classes, Lin Moyu could say it with confidence. Even if I just stand there and take your blows, you still won't be able to kill me. More importantly, this skill can be cast on others, unlike most mage spells that only affect the caster. With him in the party, everyone's safety goes up. The new skill also makes up for his poor natural defenses. Lin Moyu lifted his palm and pressed down. A soft sound echoed through the training hall as a dark breeze sprang up from nowhere and wound around him. Bone-white plates spread over his body, forming a skeletal armor that looked eerie and strangely cool. He moved a little to test it. The armor didn't restrict him at all. It felt weightless, almost as if it weren't there. If you hadn't seen it, you wouldn't have felt it. After a few more tests, he smiled. Another practical, powerful skill. He reached for the skill scroll and activated it again. The cluster of light held for a moment, then slowly dissipated. No new skill appeared. Lin Moyu wasn't disappointed. She was already pleased to have learned the magic skill. As she collected more skills, the chance of success on each scroll had been dropping. Later attempts could easily fail several times in a row. She continued to activate scroll after scroll with a composed expression. Even if everything after this failed, she told herself she had already earned the bone armor skill. One failure after another piled up, 7 straight misses. On the 10th scroll she tried, the same cluster of light wrapped around her as before. A few seconds later, a different sequence of images unfolded before her eyes. Leaping flames, sheets of ice, howling wind, and flashing lightning. 4 scenes cycling in turn. They clearly represented the 4 elements. Lin Moyu, calm until then, felt a flush of excitement. This had to be something new, and likely something elemental. Acquired skill, Summon Skeleton Mage. Summon Skeleton Mage, Level 1, summon a Black Iron Skeleton Mage. Lin Moyu activated the skill without fuss. Because the spell was only Level 1, it could summon only a Black Iron Skeleton Mage. A small black portal opened around him, and a Skeleton Mage stepped through. Summoning the Skeleton Mage cost 50 points of mental power, much more than summoning a Skeleton Warrior. For comparison, a Level 1 Skeleton Warrior required only 10 mental power. The Black Iron Skeleton Mage looked dreadful. Its entire body was in tatters, bones cracked and hollow. It walked with a lurch as if it might crumble at any moment. It carried no weapons, but flames danced in its bony hands. A fire-type skeleton mage. The summon's properties appeared in his view. Black Iron Skeleton Mage, Power 300, Agility 300, HP 900, Physique, Skill Burst Flame. Burst Flame deals fire elemental damage to a target. The attack's strength scales with the caster's mental power. The comprehensive attribute talent had multiplied everything by 30. Strength, Agility, and Constitution each showed 10 points. Spirit read 30. Lin Moyu was satisfied. A skeleton mage wasn't meant to be brawny or nimble. Those physical stats were actually a bit below a Level 1 specialist. Only its mental power, Spirit, was high. Since skill potency was tied to Spirit, that was what mattered. Lin Moyu understood the skeleton mage's role, a bulwark and a damage dealer. Skeleton warriors held the front lines while the mages stood at the back and struck. Given that, the skills themselves weren't likely to be weak. What he needed to do now was keep training the skills, raise their levels, and make the skeleton mage stronger. Each time he tried a scroll, a faint glow appeared, then faded after 10 seconds. He worked through them one after another, most attempts ending in failure. Having done this before, Lin Moyu wasn't surprised. It was normal, and it would be a pain to go back and buy dozens more. When he activated the last scroll, however, the display changed. This time he saw a different result. Like a movie trailer, a preview flickered across his vision. This one was bright and confusing. Lin Moyu couldn't make much sense of it. It didn't matter if he could read it or not. The message was what counted. Elemental Resistance, Level 1, Passive. Increases elemental resistance of self and summoned units by 10%. He hadn't expected a passive. The skill gave a flat 10% cut to elemental damage, and with his other bonuses stacking on top of it, his total elemental resistance effectively tripled. In practical terms, elemental attacks would now only deal about 1/3 of their previous damage. That was a huge boost to safety. His skeleton warriors already had good durability, but boss-level elemental abilities could still hurt them. With this new resistance, their protection against elemental damage had risen dramatically. Every Necromancer skill he'd gained so far proved useful. None of them were wasted. Half an hour had passed, since he'd entered the skill training hall. Time here was tracked in whole units, and it was moving forward steadily. Without hesitation, he summoned 4 more skeleton warriors, pushing his total up to 125. Then he dispelled the skeleton mage. Anything he summoned could be stored in his summoning space and kept there indefinitely, but he could also dismiss a summon at any time, effectively destroying it. To grind his summoning skill up again and again, he had no choice but to repeat the cycle. Summon one, then release one. The process chewed through his mental energy fast. After a few rounds, Lin Moyu retreated to the skill training room to meditate. He could feel his mental power coming back far quicker than usual, so quickly it was almost intoxicating. An hour later, his reserves had recovered by more than half. Without hesitation, he paid for another 3-hour extension. Once his mental energy was fully restored, he would return to leveling. And so it went. Skeleton mages appeared and vanished. When his energy ran out, he meditated. When it had recovered, he summoned again. The loop never stopped for long. Practicing a skill could be addictive. Lin Moyu now understood that better than ever. After more practice, the summoned skeleton mage finally reached level 2. Black Iron Skeleton Mage, level 2 power, 600 agility, 600, physique, 600 total, 1800. It was still black iron quality and looked ragged, nowhere near the skeleton warrior in terms of appearance or polish. Still, even if it wasn't particularly impressive, it was something. Lin Moyu had spent the entire afternoon in the skill training room, 4 hours straight of meditation and practice. His mind felt refreshed but slightly dulled from the repetition, the way it does after grinding through dungeon runs all day. When he left the training hall, he switched on his communicator and called Bai Yuan. The device clicked to life and Bai Yuan's composed voice answered. "What is it?" "Master Bai, I've reached level 20, Lin Moyu said calmly. There was a brief, surprised note in Bai Yuan's tone as he set down his teacup. "You're level 20? "Yes," Lin Moyu confirmed. A moment of silence, then Bai Yuan said, "Come to the Academic Affairs office and wait for me there." "Understood." Lin Moyu ended the call and made his way to the Academic Affairs office. They were alone in the hidden chamber when Meng Anwen chuckled. "Who hit level 20? Bai Yuan waved a hand. "Who else but Lin Moyu?" Meng Anwen didn't seem surprised. "Isn't that normal?" "It is, but there's something odd about it too." Bai's tone turned thoughtful. "He was only level 17 last night. To jump to 20 in a single day is unusually fast." Meng Anwen's expression turned slightly impressed. "That is quick. He must be pushing himself." Bai laughed. "I can guess how. He's probably been farming nightmare-level dungeons non-stop. After what he did on Mermaid Island, I wouldn't be shocked if he can solo a nightmare dungeon." They were still speaking when someone approached them. "Something strange is happening," the newcomer said. Bai looked up and smiled. "Old man Ning, what brings you here? You're not one to fuss over the dungeon hall unless it's important." Ning Tyron's voice was low and serious. "There's something odd in the dungeon hall. A little guy keeps setting new dungeon records, again and again. Someone even argued about him today. It almost turned physical," Ning Tyron said. "A man accused you of giving the kid a treasure to help him set a new record," he added. Bai Yuan raised an eyebrow. "What treasure, and who set the record without telling me?" He handed Ning a cup of tea. "Calm down. Drink this and tell me slowly. He's just a kid. It shouldn't be a big deal." Meng Anwen saw Bai's expression and knew he was expecting an answer. Ning took a sip and began. "A student named Lin Moyu arrived from level 17 yesterday. He ran the Variation Forest first, then the Spider Nest. Those are the records he set." Ning slid the results across the table. Variation Forest, Spider D, N, 2051. Bai Yuan and Meng Anwen exchanged looks. The times were terrifyingly fast. Even the two of them were stunned. Meng Anwen laughed at himself. "Old Bai, could you have done it back then?" Bai Yuan, ever blunt, snorted. "What do you mean? If I'm playing on normal difficulty, it's fine. Nightmare mode? That's just asking to die. Especially given how things turned out. I still don't know how that guy managed it," Meng added, shaking his head. Don't talk. I'm off. He should already be at the Academic Affairs office," Bai said, and was gone. Ning Taran watched him go and asked, puzzled, "What's he in such a hurry for?" Meng smiled. "He's going to find someone named Lin Moyu. Leave him be. Let's go have some tea." "Actually," Ning Taran said, "there's something I wanted you to do for me." Meng blinked. "What is it?" "Make a ring." At the Academic Affairs office, Lin Moyu was waiting when Bai Yuan arrived. "Master Bai," Lin said without preamble. "What's the assignment?" Straight to the point, no beating around the bush. Bai gave him a quick look. As expected, Lin was already level 20. That kind of level progression was unusually fast, far quicker than Bai remembered being at that stage. Thinking back on how relentlessly driven they'd been, Bai Yuan couldn't help but think, both of them are monsters. Lin Mohan hit level 30 in just 3 months, and then entered the Creation Theology Academy. His progress felt almost airborne. This younger brother was even more terrifying. At this rate, he'd probably reach level 30 in under 2 months. The assignment itself was simple enough. Go fetch 3 items. Chapter 86, White God's Mission, Tyrant's Heart. Bai Yuan sat with a smile, but the smile did nothing to hide his commanding presence. Years in a high position had given him an unmistakable air. Most people felt it the moment they saw him. Lin Moyu showed no reaction. He simply went on with what he was doing. Bai Yuan didn't bother with ceremony either. "You've been to the dungeon hall," he said. "You should know there's a large dungeon called the Tyrant Desert." Lin Moyu nodded. "Yes. Your task is to enter the Tyrant Desert and bring back the Tyrant's heart," Bai Yuan continued. "That dungeon is a level 25 large instance that can hold up to 40 people. The entry range is relaxed. You can go in from level 20 to 30, so there are lots of monsters, and there are no pushovers, but that suits you. The more enemies there are, the better. With your corpse burst skill, a horde of monsters just means more experience." Bai Yuan chuckled. "You think it's that simple?" Lin Moyu answered almost automatically. "The Tyrant's Heart isn't something you can just pick up. The Tyrant Desert is a large-scale dungeon. You need a full 40-person team from 733 just to get in. There are bound to be problems." "It's only a level 25 dungeon," Bai Yuan said, "but it's still easier than many other level 25 dungeons." Then he fell silent. Lin Moyu read the implication. Bai Yuan had never intended to go into the Tyrant Desert himself. Bai tapped the table, a sharp thud. "I'll give you 3 days. Bring back the Tyrant's Heart in that time, and I'll help you get a cooldown talisman." "I understand," Lin said softly. Before entering the dungeon hall, he had needed a cooldown talisman badly. Now that they were in the hall, however, he could spend a few points to bypass cooldowns, so a full talisman wasn't strictly necessary. Bai Yuan caught the look in Lin Moyu's eyes and couldn't help but give a knowing smile. "You think a cooling talisman is useless if you have access to the dungeon hall? It isn't. The cooling talisman is very effective, not something the dungeon hall can replace. There are a lot of dungeons in the hall, but most of them are ordinary. The top-tier dungeons are rare, and that's when the cooldowns get long. When you meet those best dungeons, the waiting time can be shockingly long. For some of the top ones, the cooldown can stretch to a month. That's exactly when a cooling talisman becomes valuable." Lin Moyu frowned. "But this is only a basic cooling talisman." Bai Yuan laughed. "Every high-level cooling talisman is built up from a lower-level one. If you finish the task, I'll not only give you this basic talisman, I'll also show you how to upgrade it." Lin Moyu hadn't expected that. After a moment, he nodded. "All right, I'll bring back the Tyrant's Heart." He accepted the task. Bai Yuan laughed. "The school is holding its opening ceremony in 3 days. All the students admitted into your incoming class at Xiajing School will be there, so you should come. Don't miss it." "I'll be there." When Bai returned, Meng Anwen was still sitting quietly, sipping tea and staring off at the distance as if watching a scene play out. "Well?" he asked, pouring another cup for Bai. "Are you satisfied?" A smile curved Bai Yuan's mouth. "The more I look, the more pleased I am. That kid has a calm temperament, just my type. I told him to go to the Tyrant Desert and fetch the Tyrant's Heart. I gave him 3 days. "Oh?" Meng Anwen raised an eyebrow. "It's not easy to gather so many people there. He doesn't know how to work with a team, does he? He'll have to go it alone." "Solo a major instance," Bai murmured. Meng Anwen's mouth twitched. "You used to do the same when you were young." Bai Yuan laughed. "A true hero doesn't go bragging about past deeds." Meng An grinned. "Oh, please, I remember you went in at level 30 and came out a wreck." Bai Yuan's smile vanished. He quickly sipped his tea to hide his embarrassment. "Old stories are best left alone," he muttered. The dungeon hall buzzed with activity. Lin Moyu's arrival had drawn a crowd. He'd become a minor celebrity overnight. Though his level wasn't high, he'd broken records 2 days running, and people were eager to see what he'd do next. "He's going to clear another dungeon. Think he'll set a new record again? I wonder which one he'll run this time." Lin Moyu made his way to the task center in the middle of the hall to check the available quests. Several were tied to the Tyrant's Desert, offering rewards that could be converted into points. Then he froze. There was a quest to buy a Tyrant's Heart. Someone was offering 100,000 points for it. The price was astronomical, far higher than usual. A level 25 dungeon, even a big one, was still only level 25. How could something inside be worth 100,000 points? That much currency could almost buy a full set of platinum gear. Knowing Bai Yuan wanted a Tyrant's Heart made Lin Moyu even more suspicious. The item had to be extraordinarily rare. "Student Moyu, are you going to take one?" a voice asked. He looked up to see Shu Han smiling at him. He'd been about to ask her exactly what a tyrant's heart was. "Do you know what it is?" he asked. "Of course," Shu Han replied without hesitating. The tyrant's heart is the main drop from the final boss in the Tyrant Desert dungeon. Alchemists use it as a core ingredient to craft boss-grade jewelry, specifically the Tyrant's necklace. She went on. Boss jewelry is a special category. They grant attributes you won't find on ordinary gear. For example, the Goblin King's Ring raises all of the wearer's skills by 1 level, no matter what class they are. Lin Moyu wasn't sure it would do him any good, but that didn't make it any less valuable. Shu Han continued. The Tyrant's necklace is a great piece, but its core material, the Tyrant's heart, is incredibly hard to get. He went on. The Tyrant Desert is a huge dungeon with plenty of choices for entry, and the monsters inside are tougher than the nightmare difficulty of other dungeons at the same level. The boss is world-class and extremely difficult to take down. Even a full party of level 40 players will find it slow, exhausting, and risky. The Tyrant's heart only drops about once a year. It's been 2 years since one last dropped. Lin Moyu couldn't help but wonder aloud, with so many people tackling the dungeon and the Tyrant having been slain countless times, why had no one obtained the heart? "Why is that?" he asked. Shu Han chuckled. Lin Moyu was usually so quiet. Shu Han liked provoking him into talking. This student, 2 years his junior, was amusing in a younger brother way. Shu Han raised 2 fingers. There are 2 reasons. The fewer people in the Tyrant Desert dungeon, the better your chances of getting the Tyrant's heart, Shu Han explained. The game counts the number of people present the moment you enter the dungeon. Quitting halfway through doesn't change that. And the second thing is the boss. The faster you kill it, the higher the drop rate for the Tyrant's heart. Hearing this, Lin Moyu finally put the pieces together. Buying the Tyrant's heart from the mission center for 100,000 points was an absolute bargain. Not only did Bai Yuan want it, now that Lin Moyu knew how rare and valuable it was, there was no way he would sell it. Boss accessories like that were worth keeping. "Thanks," Lin Moyu said earnestly to Shu Han. Most people wouldn't have been so forthcoming with information, and he appreciated it. Shu Han chuckled. "Don't mention it. By the way, I've heard the Academy is organizing a raid on the Tyrant Desert in the next day or 2. Do you want to team up with them?" Lin Moyu shook his head. "No. I'll go in alone." Shu Han covered his mouth in surprise, eyes widening at the idea of Lin Moyu tackling the Tyrant Desert solo. Shu Han had assumed Lin Moyu would gather a team, so she was stunned when he announced he would go in alone. She'd heard of people soloing small, ordinary 1.4 level instances, but a solo run of a major raid. That was unheard of, practically impossible, something that had never been done. "Don't be too hard on yourself, Junior," Shu Han said with genuine concern. Lin Moyu only chuckled and walked toward the Tyrant Desert dungeon. The entrance vortex of a large dungeon is far grander than that of a regular one, unique and unmistakable. Projected on a shimmering curtain of light above the entrance was a record left 4 years ago. Flying Dragon Academy, 40 people, 16 hours, 45 minutes, 18 seconds. Flying Dragon Academy, like Qianlong Academy, is one of the school's 6 colleges. The student body is informally ranked, ordinary colleges, independent departments, and the elite schools, and that hierarchy is an unspoken rule. Before the whole Lingzhen incident, clashes between ordinary students and academy students almost came to blows. Rivalries and competition between institutions ran deep. Shu Han's voice was tight with concern. "Student Lin Moyu, are you sure you want to go in alone?" Lin Moyu met his eyes and gave a calm, firm nod. She took a breath and was about to step forward when a haughty voice cut in from behind them. "Stay out of the way." Chapter 87. If he succeeds, he will make history. Lin Moyu's reflexes were sharp. He yanked Shu Han back just as a fully armored knight barreled past, his face twisted with malice. If Lin Moyu hadn't moved, Shu Han would have been knocked down. A swarm of students followed close behind the knight, who was huge, nearly 2 meters tall, and radiated an oppressive, intimidating presence. The knight fixed Lin Moyu with a sneer, then threw his head back in a show of arrogance. "Today, Bailey Academy will run the Tyrant Desert dungeon, and we're going to set a new record," he announced. Dozens of voices behind him repeated the declaration, loud, and confident. The Tyrant Desert record had stood untouched for 4 years, set by Feilong Academy. That long a streak was proof of how brutal the dungeon was. No one had even come close to breaking it. Shu Han leaned in and murmured, "Rumors been going around the last few days that Bailey wants to clear Tyrant Desert. They've apparently made heavy preparations, kept some of their key players capped at level 30, and several senior students have outfitted them with full gold gear." Lin Moyu understood their calculations. The plan was obvious. Keep the players' levels low to meet some strategic requirement, then boost their effectiveness with high-grade equipment supplied by stronger academy members. It was a risky, ingenious approach. If it worked, Bailey Academy would make history. Breaking the record here wasn't just about extra points or contribution credits. It was an honor. Students from every college trained and schemed for the chance. A strong performance could also be the first step toward being accepted by one of the top academies. So when a knight from Bailey College strode into the dungeon hall and loudly announced that his party would conquer the Tyrant Desert dungeon and break the record set by Feilong College 4 years earlier, everyone noticed. He cleared his throat, then looked down at the student standing in his way. "Student number 02, step aside." Lin Moyu didn't move. "I arrived first," he said calmly, not giving an inch. The knight's expression hardened. "Do you want to join our run? Sorry. This mission is assigned to us. Maybe next time we'll take you along." Lin Moyu blinked, unable to hide his indignation. Who did this guy think he was, telling him to wait his turn? The knight could see the stubbornness in his face and felt a flush of embarrassment at being contradicted so openly. He glanced around at the hundreds of students packed into the hall. With so many watching, there was nothing he could do to force Lin Moyu aside. He scowled, furious and humiliated, but he couldn't press the issue. The captain barked, "Everything's ready. Let's enter the dungeon." No sooner had he finished than Lin Moyu leaned toward Shu Han and said quietly, "I'm going in." Shu Han nodded. The moment Lin Moyu vanished, the vortex leading to the Tyrant Desert raid flared to life. That meant someone had entered. Lin Moyu had actually gone in. A nearby knight's mouth twitched with contempt. This kid wants to make trouble? Going in alone, he's looking for death. The whole dungeon hall erupted into a buzz. He really went in. Soloing the Tyrant Desert? That's definitely a true boss raid. I've never heard of anyone taking on a big raid by themselves. If he pulls it off, he'll make history. It's nearly impossible. I went through the Tyrant Desert once. It's deadly. One mistake and you're finished. If anyone else tried this, there'd be no way they'd make it. The knights leading the Bailey Academy team exchanged uneasy looks. Their squad had been ready to set the record for the raid. Now they were suddenly being upstaged by a lone kid trying to clear it on his own. He noticed that Lin Moyu was still in silver gear, while I was wearing a full set of gold. A flush of awkwardness ran through everyone at Bailey Academy. The knight on the academy side felt his momentum slipping and knew he couldn't hesitate any longer. Enter the instance. With that shout, students from Bailey Academy surged forward and shoved them through the portal. The knight glanced at the shimmering barrier as they passed and read the time displayed. 16 hours, 45 minutes, 18 seconds. He smirked. I'll beat that for sure, he thought. Tyrant Desert was a massive dungeon, already at level 25, so the entry costs were steep. Lin Moyu had paid 500 points to get in. To eliminate the cooldown between runs would cost 2,000 points. That meant if you wanted to farm the dungeon repeatedly, each extra run would cost 2,500 points total, 2,500 for one run, 10,000 for 4 runs. For the first time, Lin Moyu felt his remaining balance of 120,000 points might not stretch as far as he'd assumed. Points were so easy to spend. He hoped the reward for breaking the record would be worth it. Hot wind drove the yellow sand into the air, turning the sky into a haze. The sun beat down mercilessly. Everything about the heat and the rising temperature told Lin Moyu this place was brutal. Not far off, long ridges of sand blocked the view. He found himself in a basin ringed by dunes. A horde of skeleton warriors had already appeared, 125 in all, and they scattered to the 4 corners of the basin. He remembered the topographical map and climbed a nearby dune to get his bearings. From the crest, he could see only endless desert. There was no sense of direction. The sun hung directly overhead, useless for navigation. This was a replica, not the real world. The sun didn't move and couldn't indicate north or south. All directions blurred together. According to the 16-hour log he'd reviewed, the scale of this dungeon was going to be unprecedented. He was still thinking that when a skeleton suddenly sounded the alarm, "Enemy!" Without warning, a dead branch shot up out of the sand and wrapped itself around the skeleton, tangling the bone creature in brittle, grasping wood. The skeleton warrior's strength stat read a staggering 12,000. With a single sweep of its blade, it sheared through the dead branches. Sand exploded outward as a gigantic tree suddenly burst from the desert, 10 meters tall, all writhing, desiccated limbs. The branches lashed frantically at the skeleton, but it only tightened its grip on the great knife and kept swinging. The dead limbs were scattered like shrapnel. In the blink of an eye, the tree had been reduced to a single, withering trunk. Lin Moyu arrived, and just before the tree collapsed completely, launched a detection skill. A status window popped up. Desert Ghost Tree, Super Enhanced Elite Monster. Level 25, Power, 5,000, Agility 1,000, Spirit 2,000, Physique 6,000, Skill Death Coil. Judging from those stats, it was roughly on par with the Skeleton Warrior's pre-upgrade strength, and even stronger than the boss-level Python from the Mermaid Dungeon. As you'd expect from a large dungeon, they were just ordinary mobs, but their stats matched those of the level 24 leader in the Mermaid Dungeon. If the Skeleton Warriors hadn't been upgraded, these enemies would have caused some trouble. A bronze-level Skeleton Warrior at full upgrade had a total attribute score of 6,200. That would be manageable, but it would take effort, more like fighting a boss, where you have to chip away at them rather than steamroll through. It wouldn't be as easy as it was now. Seeing the enemy's attributes clearly, Lin Moyu suddenly understood what kind of monsters populated this dungeon. Killed, level 25 Desert Ghost Tree, EXP 100,000. Obtained, Ghost Tree Branches 5. Not only did their stats resemble a boss's, their experience payout did too. Killing a single one granted 300,000 EXP. No wonder they were dangerous. At that moment, the Skeleton Warriors kept running into enemies, more desert ghost trees. This stretch of desert was clearly the ghost trees' territory. They weren't especially numerous, but they were everywhere. Usually buried beneath the sand, they leapt up and attacked anyone who wandered by. Skill, Bone Armor. The Skeleton Warriors activated Bone Armor and prepared to fight. Lin Moyu pressed his bout, palm to his chest, and the Bone Armor rose to meet him. Ribs and plates knitted themselves around his body, and the whites of his eyes gleamed in the sunlight. He sent the Skeleton Warriors out to scout in every direction. The control range for the black iron skeletons was only 500 meters. At bronze level, it had been 1,000 meters. Now at silver, the radius had stretched to 2,000 meters. Lin Moyu followed the route the skeletons had taken, watching more and more of the landscape fill in on the mental map in his head. An hour passed, and his detection field kept widening. All he found was yellow sand and the occasional desert ghost tree. No other monsters. After 2 hours, a notification appeared in his mind. Water detected, 117. He hurried toward the signal. From the crest of a dune he saw it, an oasis. A ribbon of water fanned out and wound toward the horizon. He recalled the scouts from the far flanks and concentrated them. Instantly, a large number of skeleton warriors materialized in front of him. They hurried for the oasis. Desert oases always hid danger. Skeleton warriors led the way. One of them sprinted to the water's edge, and with a sudden roar, the oasis itself heaved. Sheets of water rolled up, and dozens of scorpion-like shapes poured out. Lin Moyu didn't panic. He stayed put on the sand dune, refusing to descend. From his vantage, he made only light, probing strikes, like testing the wind. A status window flickered into view. Oasis Giant Scorpion, Power, Agility, 1,000, Physique, 6,000, Skill, Poison Needle. Each giant scorpion stood 2 meters tall and stretched more than 5 meters long, including its tail. At the end of every tail was a massive poisonous stinger, petal-shaped and faintly blue in the sunlight, making the creatures grotesque and terrifying. Hundreds of them swarmed toward the lone skeleton warrior. The skeleton did not hesitate. His blade was already raised. A more cautious party would have approached the oasis step by step, drawing out a few monsters at a time, surrounding them, and picking them off. Lin Moyu's way was not subtle or careful. 10 skeleton warriors swung their swords in unison, a synchronized display of skill. Skill, crazy strike. A blow that converts 3 times the user's strength into attack power. The broadsword flared red, its light blotting out the sun, and a giant oasis scorpion let out a scream before collapsing instantly. Killed, level 25 oasis giant scorpion. Experience, obtained, sharp tail needle cuff 3. 2 seconds later, the remaining giant oasis scorpions closed the distance. A hand rose. Skill, corpse explosion. Chapter 88, The Holy Land of Skill Training. A thunderous blast shook the air. Yellow sand billowed up, coating everything. The giant oasis scorpion was engulfed in the blast and sent tumbling. Its corpse rolled across the dunes. Explosion after explosion rocked the battlefield, and a huge crater opened where the bombardment had struck. Sand fell like rain, burying the scorpion remains one after another. Loot and experience notifications popped up in Lin Moyu's inventory. He quickly shoved the gathered materials into his storage space while the experience numbers kept climbing. Each oasis giant scorpion gave as much experience as thousands of the little spiders from the spider nest. One wave alone pushed his total up by 8%. Lin Moyu grinned inwardly. He hadn't expected experience to scale up so fast after hitting level 20. If he could keep clearing monsters this way, leveling would be almost effortless, like drinking water. While other players had to be cautious and fight themselves to exhaustion, for him, it felt as easy as slicing fruit. Experience truly poured in like rain, and the material drops were plentiful too. In the space of a few moments, the monsters skirting the oasis were wiped out. Lin Moyu fell in step with the skeletal warriors and followed the narrow waterway as it wound away into the distance. He wasn't sure this was the right direction, but it was the only path that made sense. Everywhere else was a sea of yellow sand with no landmarks to guide him. On both banks, dozens of giant oasis scorpions lay half-buried in the dunes, their bodies hidden beneath the sand, with only curved tails protruding like jagged thorns. As the skeletons pressed forward, those spines were cleared away one by one, leaving behind lifeless husks. More skeletal fighters fanned out along the sides of the channel, moving in the same direction and rooting out small sinew that had taken cover in the desert. There weren't huge numbers of them, but each kill still yielded useful experience. The Tyrant Desert was vast, too big to navigate by instinct alone. After more than an hour following the waterway, new terrain finally came into view. A low, rocky hill rose at the end of the channel. Lin Moyu understood why the other teams were moving so slowly. Part of it was simply finding the way. The other part was the monsters that lived in the oasis. The giant scorpions that guarded the route were each the kind of threat you'd expect from a dungeon boss. Even a normal team, 40 people in full formation, would still need time to clear a path past them. The waterway ran out and vanished into the sand. Sparse vegetation, mostly cacti, stood in the hollow that opened before them. Crawling among the plants was a mass of ants, but these were no ordinary insects. Each one was over a meter long, bearing fangs. Barbs grew on every foot like knives with handles. Desert larva, enhanced elite monster, level 25, power 2500, agility 2000, intelligence 1000, physique 3000, skill none. They were a step down from the giant desert scorpions, but still enhanced elite monsters, the kind you'd meet in nightmare mode dungeons of the same level. And these were larvae. Ants operated as colonies, with a strict hierarchy and clear divisions of labor. The young were usually the weakest. If even the larvae were enhanced elite monsters, Lin Moyu felt the weight of how dangerous this place truly was. The worker ants and soldier ants swarmed above him. Lin Moyu brightened. He could feel a surge of experience points coming his way. His probing had caught their attention. Several larvae lifted their heads and stared at him. In the next moment, they charged with a shriek. They moved unbelievably fast, faster than his 2000 agility should allow. Even faster were his skeleton warriors. A few of them intercepted the larvae, blades raised, and one after another the strikes landed. 2 clicks. Instant kills, no suspense. The gap in stats was overwhelming. With a combat stat of 12,000, the skeleton warriors were utterly dominant. They swept out and cut down the nearby larvae without taking any losses. Kill level 25 desert larva, experience 5 fangs F3. Kill level 25 desert larva, experience trickled up steadily. It had been more than 4 hours since he'd entered the instance, and his progress had climbed to 15%. After that, no more large packs appeared. Monsters were scattered and drop rates slowed, so his efficiency fell off a lot. "What the hell?" he muttered. Lin Moyu stepped closer and found a strange-looking cactus, its arms dotted with small, dark blue fruits that hung like grapes. A quick identification prompt popped up. Desert fruit. Restores a large amount of mental power quickly. Must be eaten within 5 minutes of picking, cannot be stored. A creaking noise crackled in his ear. Dozens, no, more than 100, young ants burst out of the ground and swarmed around him, filling the air with angry, high-pitched chittering as if warning him to stay away from the fruit. Lin Moyu answered by raising the broadsword of his skeleton warrior, ready for whatever came. Ahead, a mountain blocked the path. Its cliffs were sheer and unclimbable, and at its base were several cave entrances. Ants clustered at each mouth, an ant colony. If he wanted to get past the mountain, he would have to go through the ant nest, but there were 5 tunnels, and he had no idea which one led through. At a thought from Lin Moyu, the 50 skeleton warriors split into 5 groups and scattered toward different caves. He then plucked a fruit from one of the desert cacti and popped it into his mouth. It wasn't as sour as he'd expected, slightly sweet, with a flavor and appearance not unlike grapes. More than half of his spirit power had been spent, but the effect was immediate. His spirit power began to surge back, far faster than meditation ever managed. In under a minute, it was nearly fully restored. Lin Moyu stared in surprise. His total spirit power was 2,900, and with the blessing of his spirit suit, his effective power was at least double that of a mage his level. The desert fruit's restorative effect was astonishing, roughly 10 times faster than whatever he could achieve meditating in the skill training hall. He glanced at the surrounding patches of special cacti, heavy with fruit, and made a quick decision. He began summoning skeleton mages one by one. The nearly full spirit power he had just regained was quickly drained again as each new summon took its toll. After he had drained his mental power, Lin Moyu dismissed all the summoned skeleton mages. The medicinal effect from the desert fruit still lingered, though, so his mental reserves were recovering quickly. As soon as he regained enough strength, he called the skeleton mages back. When the drug's effects finally faded, he ate another desert fruit and waited for his power to recover again. The summoned mages flickered into being and vanished in quick succession. This place was perfect for him to train. He didn't have to worry about wasting mental power, and his skill advancement was incredibly fast. For that alone, Lin Moyu felt the trip had been worthwhile. While he concentrated on his drills, the skeletal warriors surged toward the ant nest. It lay about 2,000 meters away in a straight line, a distance that didn't change despite the rough terrain. Inside the ant cave, the ants were even more numerous than before. System: Kill level 25 desert larvae, EXP plus 1,000. System: Obtained ant fangs X3. Kill level 26 desert worker ants, EXP plus 3,000. Obtained ant fangs X6. Deeper in the cave, one of Lin Moyu's skeleton warriors ran into a nest of worker ants. From the looks of it, these were enhanced elite monsters, level 26, and packing a lot of experience. Lin Moyu didn't bother directing the skeletons. He let them handle the fight and turned his attention to something else. This place was too good to pass up for skill practice. He focused all his energy on training, summoning and dismissing a skeleton mage over and over. After hundreds of repetitions, that particular skill finally jumped to level 3. It was only the beginning. He kept at it, summoning relentlessly while the skeletons did the fighting. He munched the desert fruits he'd collected to keep his mana topped up, and his mental energy recovered at an impressive rate. 10 minutes later, the skill rose another level. The rate of improvement here was leagues faster than in the regular training hall, a true blessing for anyone serious about leveling their abilities. In the ant cave, the skeleton warriors pressed on, mapping the tunnels as they went. Experience was steadily rising. It was up to 17% now. 3 hours later, Lin Moyu finally called a halt. The desert fruits he'd brought were almost gone, and his summoned skeleton mage skill had just hit level 20. There was no way to push it any higher for the moment. He checked the new mage's attributes, and his eyes brightened. Silver rank skeleton mage, power, 6,000, agility, 6,000, spirit 24,000, physique 6,000. Skill, Ice Storm, conjures an ice storm in an area, dealing ice elemental damage based on the caster's spirit. The summoned figure that formed before him took the likeness of Master Lu of the Ice Division, both palms wreathed in a cold glow. Ice crystals appeared and dissolved around him, the occasional sharp crack echoing through the cave. With a 30-fold boost, the mage's spirit reached 24,000. Lin Moyu could picture how terrifying its attacks would be. Ice Storm was an area of effect skill. He pointed toward a cluster of ants and gave the order, use the skill. The skeletal mage brought his bony hands together and unleashed a beam of light. Under Lin Moyu's stare, a shard of cold light burst outward. In an instant, the air chilled and a storm of ice began to fall, huge flakes and razor-edged icicles cascading like rain. The scorched desert was frozen over in seconds. The ice storm lasted a full 10 seconds and covered a 10-meter radius. It was clearly an area attack, and a devastating one. The display of 24,000 spiritual power was not an exaggeration. That made sense. The skeleton mage skill can only be learned at level 20 and is noticeably stronger than the skeleton warrior. There are 2 types of skeleton summons, each with its own role, but the mage's drawback is obvious: its energy cost. Summoning a skeleton warrior requires only 500 spiritual power, while a skeleton mage needs a full 1,500, 3 times as much. Without the bonus from his 3-piece spiritual suit, Lin Moyu's own 1,300 spiritual power wouldn't have been enough to call a level 20 skeleton mage. Then again, it's to be expected that someone who unlocks a skill at level 20 could have that skill developed to level 20. Desert fruits were practically non-existent. They weren't plentiful to begin with, and most of what he'd eaten went into the later stages of the summoned skeleton mage skill. Once the skill passed level 15, consumption shot up. After a few summons, a single fruit would be gone. He'd have loved to take some out of the dungeon with him, but that wasn't allowed. Worse, the fruits couldn't be stored. Once picked, they had to be used within 5 minutes or their effect faded. If he could have carried them out of the instance, Lin Moyu would have come back several times and walked away with a pile of them. As it was, he'd have to make the most of what he had and not let anything go to waste. Any leftover fruit would simply be used to fill empty slots for his skeleton mages. He currently had 125 skeleton warriors. With the remaining fruits, he planned to top up those slots. He ate a desert fruit and summoned 5 more skeleton warriors, raising the total to 130. Then he threw everything into summoning skeleton mages as fast as he could, knowing full well that the attributes of each summoned mage were random and entirely out of his control. A sudden gust of chill wind blew through the area, and the surrounding elements began to tremble. Fire, wind, electricity, each one humming in turn. One after another, skeleton mages materialized at Lin Moyu's side, each infused with a different elemental affinity. They all belonged to the same class, skeleton mage. Their base attributes were identical. What set them apart were their elemental skills. Fire skeleton mage, skill Burst Flame. Burst Flame deals fire elemental damage to a single target. Damage scales with the user's mental power. Ice skeleton mage, skill Ice Storm. Ice Storm conjures an ice storm within the area, dealing ice elemental damage to targets inside. Damage scales with the user's mental power. Wind skeleton mage, skill Tornado Storm. Tornado Storm summons a tornado storm in the area, dealing wind elemental damage to targets within range. Damage scales with the user's mental power. Electric Skeleton Mage, skill 5 Thunders. 5 Thunders strikes a single target with lightning damage. Damage scales with the user's mental power. Among them, the Fire and Electric Skeleton Mages specialize in single target attacks, while the Ice and Wind variants are area of effect casters. The ice and wind skeleton mages attack in groups. Their silver-white bodies are a little shorter than the skeleton warriors, but the soul fire in their skulls burns brighter. Magic crackles and coils in their palms, power that Lin Moyu judged could one-shot other mages of the same level. By the time the desert fruit was completely used up, the long empty summoning slot was finally full. 130 skeleton warriors and 70 skeleton mages stood ready, 200 skeletons in all. Lin Moyu smiled inwardly. At this strength, he could steamroll same-level dungeons. Nightmare difficulty? No problem. Even hell difficulty? Odd an issue. The huge desert raid he was in now, a dungeon designed for 40 players, could be handled single-handedly. His skeleton army easily outclassed 40 professionals. He dismissed the thought and turned his attention to training. Next time, he told himself, I'll work on other skills. There were still several spells to learn, bone armor and the slow curse among them. With enough mental strength, those two would be easy enough to master. The hardest thing was the corpse burst. After all, corpses weren't abundant. When a monster in the dungeon was killed, its body dissolved after a while, and he couldn't rely on the ability constantly. He also had to conserve some mental energy for emergencies. He had spent nearly 4 hours practicing the skill earlier. In total, it had been more than 8 hours since Lin Moyu entered the instance. By now, the layout of the ant cave had been roughly mapped. His skeleton warriors had pushed 2 kilometers in and had a clear picture of everything within that range. Lin Moyu realized that, no matter which entrance you took, the tunnels interconnected internally, more like a massive spider's nest than a simple cavern. The ant cave was far larger than any spider lair. 2,000 meters turned out to be only a sliver of its true depth. As Lin Moyu moved deeper, the distance closed and his fighters sprang into action again. They darted back and forth through the passages, probing and reporting terrain for him. The cave system twisted and folded into thousands of passages, complicated, circuitous, like a gigantic labyrinth with no obvious edge. Faced with that, Lin Moyu had no choice but to pick a direction and press onward. Kill. Level 26 Desert Soldier Ant. Reward 36. Loot. Ant Fang. An alert popped up unexpectedly. Soldier ants had appeared somewhere in the cave. Lin Moyu knew the colony's division of labor. Workers tended the nest. Soldiers fought. Soldier ants were the queen's guards and rarely strayed far. If soldier ants were nearby, the queen couldn't be far off. Without hesitation, Lin Moyu charged toward the direction of the signal. The skeletons that accompanied him shifted into formation and fanned out to cover his flanks. As they advanced, more tunnels opened up, ant caves branching out, and the number of soldier ants increased. He stepped into a cavern so vast it swallowed the torchlight. Inside, a swarm of soldier ants stirred. They hadn't awakened until his presence disturbed them. Hundreds of them snapped to attention at once, their bodies vibrating, a wet hissing rustle filling the air as they surged toward him. Soldier ant barracks, Lin Moyu murmured. Ant colonies built nests, and soldiers gathered in dedicated barracks. This had to be one, and there were likely more than one such lair ahead. The skeleton warrior met him first, and then the skeleton mages followed. It was the skeleton mage's first real fight. Explosion flame, ice storm, tornado storm, 5 thunderbolts, 70 skeleton mages unleashed their spells at once. Elemental forces ran wild, spells streaking through the cave in a roar of sound and color. Lin Moyu was dazzled. By the time the skeleton warrior surged into the ant ranks, many soldier ants were already dead or wounded. With 24,000 mental power backing them, the skeleton mages struck with a lethality far beyond ordinary professionals of the same level, damage even a level 30 specialist couldn't match. In less than a dozen seconds, hundreds of soldier ants lay slaughtered. It wasn't as instantaneous as the corpse explosions earlier, but it required far less effort. Lin Moyu didn't need to move, he simply stood and watched the display. It was beautiful in its own way, a spectacle unlike the crude violence of exploding corpses. Ahead, the soldier ant barracks came into view. Lin Moyu felt certain he had the right direction. We pushed deeper, clearing one soldier ant barracks after another. The experience bar climbed at an alarming rate. Our team's total had already jumped to 32%. We pressed on unimpeded until we finally reached the inner depths of the ant cave. A constant buzz filled my ears. Rounding a corner, the skeleton warrior suddenly came face to face with a swarm of flying ants. Desert Flying Ant Super Enhanced Elite Monster. Level 27, Power 6,000, Agility 3,000, Spirit 3,000, Physique 7,000. The skeleton reacted instantly. His attributes made themselves obvious in the fight. His power surged to 12,000, delivering devastating blows that almost wiped the flying ants out in a single strike. The ants, despite their numbers, could not dent his defense. His physique was simply too strong to penetrate. After a brief, brutal skirmish, the swarm was annihilated. Kill, level 27 Desert Flying Ants, plus 360,000 EXP. Loot, Flying Ant Wings 2. Lin Moyu's eyes lit up at the drop. Flying ant wings were one of the items needed for the tyrant's desert task. Each flying ant wing was worth 5,000 gold coins. That fact made Lin Moyu certain he had found the right path. Flying ants served as the queen's personal guard. They never strayed far from her, and there were far fewer of them in a colony than there were soldier or worker ants. The team pressed deeper into the tunnels, coming across more flying ants as they went. Unlike the soldier ants, the flyers didn't assemble in barracks. They tended to appear in small packs of 3. The skeleton warriors swept forward relentlessly, cutting down cluster after cluster of the winged insects. Before he realized how much time had passed, Lin Moyu had been moving through the ant cave for almost 2 hours. At last, they reached the cavern's end. A monstrous ant filled the chamber, 10 meters tall, its body swollen and heavy, a hulking silhouette in the gloom. 3 pairs of enormous wings sprouted from its back, flexing now and then and producing a harsh, grating sound. Standing before it were 4 other ants, each over 6 meters in height, winged and capable of flight. Their legs curved like giant sickles, a fearsome sight. "Is this the final boss of the instance?" Lin Moyu asked, unconvinced. With a flick of his wrist, he activated his detection technique. The skeleton warrior charged out. Chapter 90. It would be great if there were always so many monsters. The scan lit up, and the Desert Queen's information filled his vision. Desert Ant Queen, leader-level monster. Level 28, Power 9,000, Agility 3,000, Spirit 8,000, Physique 8,000, Skills. Summon Ant Colony, Sonic Attack, Storm Blow, Curl Up. She wasn't the dungeon boss. The boss of the Tyrant Desert Dungeon would be the Tyrant, a world-class threat. This Ant Queen was only a leader-level creature. Her stats weren't extraordinary. The scan swept over the 4 giant ants accompanying her and showed their profiles at the same time. Ant Queen's Guard, Super Enhanced Elite Monster, Level 27, Power 5,000, Agility 4,000, Spirit 3,000, Physique 7,000, Skill, Carapace Hardening. There were 4 of these guards. Their power, agility, and spirit were all middling, but their physique was extremely high. With Carapace Hardening, they were clearly intended as living shields. Their presence dramatically increased the Queen's survivability. The Ant Queen was the colony's linchpin, and they would accept no losses. Other teams would have a headache when they ran into 4 personal guards. Most groups tried to take them down one by one. Lin Moyu felt the gravity of the situation the moment he used his detection skill. A skeleton warrior had already charged forward, and the Ant Queen's personal guards surged out to meet them. The Queen beat her wings and let out a piercing shriek. Skill, Sonic Attack. The horrible sound waves reverberated through the ant nest. Lin Moyu's bone armor flared with silver-white light and absorbed the brunt of the assault. The waves struck every skeleton warrior and skeleton mage at once, an indiscriminate, wide-range group attack, but its power was moderate. Lin's bone armor held, and the skeleton troops shrugged it off without trouble. With a constitution of 12,000, they could resist most blows. "Tap! Kill one!" Lin Moyu barked. On his command, the skeletons moved as one. The broadsword's blade glowed red as the warrior's skill kicked in. Skill, Crazy Strike. The skeleton mage behind them activated his spell at the same time. They all converged, aiming at the same Queen Ant Guard. Fire, ice, tornado, thunder. The elements burst like fireworks. In a blinding flash, one of the guards dropped instantly. Killed, 27th level Ant Queen's personal guard. Experience, Flying Ant Wings 10. Lin Moyu raised his hand. Skill, Corpse Burst. Boom. The explosion sent the 3 Queen's guards flying. Hey, he didn't die. Lin Moyu said, surprised. Corpse burst dealt damage equal to 450% of the corpse's vitality. Creatures of the same kind shouldn't have survived. Up close, the three guards' carapaces shimmered with a metallic sheen, as if coated in armor. Carapace hardening. Lin Moyu realized they'd used a defensive skill. The effect was similar to a knight's ultimate, massively boosting their defenses. Good, he thought, but how long could it hold? Before he could answer, skeleton warriors lunged in with lightning speed, and by the time they landed, they were already surrounding them. The skeleton mages unleashed their spells, striking out in every direction. The Queen Ant's three bodyguards flared their own skills in response. Their carapaces gleamed, their bodies becoming almost impossibly hard, and their legs curled like hooked sickles. Even so, they were outclassed. With only 5,000 strength points, they were no match for the skeleton warriors' 12,000 physique. They couldn't trade blows head-on, not against one skeleton warrior, and certainly not against an army of 130 warriors supported by 70 mages. The disparity in attributes was overwhelming. The combined barrage of spells and strikes slammed into the trio. The bright sheen on their armor quickly dulled as powerful impacts found purchases they hadn't expected to face. Then the Queen Ant beat her enormous wings once more. A gust whipped out like a living thing. Ability, Storm Blow. The gale slammed into the attacking ranks, lifting many skeletons from the ground and tearing at them as they spun through the air. Bones splintered and armor shards flew. Skeleton after skeleton was shredded mid-flight and crashed back down, injured and broken. The damage wasn't large, but it was enough to show how dangerous the Queen Ant's abilities were. Lin Moyu breathed a little easier only because of his passive skill, Elemental Resistance, which, when amplified, cut elemental damage down to 1/3. Even so, the skeleton warrior was hurt. Without that passive, the wound would have been far worse. In another class, he might have been killed outright. Lin's face tightened. He took 2 quick steps back and stood behind the skeleton mage. "Bone armor," he ordered, and a new suit of bone plating snapped into place around the mage. A blasting wind struck the skeleton mage. His frame was nowhere near as sturdy as the skeleton warrior's, and it tossed him around. Fortunately, the Queen Ant's attack lost power over the distance, and the bone armor flashed, absorbing and blocking the worst of it. Lin Moyu's mind was already working. The real weak point in the team was him. Even with bone armor summoned to stand between him and danger, his own defense was the lowest. If he took a heavy hit, the damage would ripple through to his summons, and the skeletons themselves would end up badly injured. This kind of damage was calculated from the caster's own defense, ignoring the skeleton's physical armor entirely. There was nothing for Lin Moyu to rely on but raw numbers, so he had to avoid taking hits whenever he could. The elemental storm raged for a full 20 seconds before it finally died down. The skeleton warriors collapsed under the onslaught, only to scramble back to their feet and press the attack again. They felt no pain, knew nothing of fear. They obeyed only Lin Moyu's commands. Perfect soldiers. The skeleton mage was no different. Its repertoire kept expanding. Flames, lightning, ice, and wind flared out in quick succession, each spell tearing into the battlefield. At that moment, the Ant Queen's personal guard exhausted its skill. The protective aura flickered and vanished mid-attack. With a ragged cry, the guard fell and died. The shimmering defenses around the other 2 guards dissolved as well. Lin Moyu didn't hesitate. "Skill, corpse burst," he barked. Corpses detonated in a rapid triple succession. The first blast tore through the 2 remaining Queen's guards, killing them outright and wounding the Queen. The second and third explosions left her no chance to flee. The Ant Queen screamed as the blast shredded her wings. Blood spattered her body as she reeled, grievously wounded. The 3 strikes tore into the Queen's body, leaving her half destroyed. Then, abruptly, the Queen Ant began to shrink and curl inward. Skill. Curl up. A crystal-clear membrane spread over her carapace. The film was incredibly tough. The skeleton warrior's great blade couldn't cut it, and even the skeleton mage's spells failed to break through, for the moment. Another defensive skill, like extreme defense, Lin Moyu observed. Let's see how long it holds. All such defensive skills had limits. The harder the attacks, the shorter the duration. The skeleton warriors redoubled their strikes, and the skeleton mages unleashed volley after volley of magic. Every kind of assault rained down on the curled queen. Her screams never stopped, echoing through the ant caverns. Then, beneath the din of battle, a dense scuttling rose all around them. Lin Moyu turned his head and saw swarms of ants pouring from every tunnel, mad, frantic, impossibly fast. The queen had activated another ability, Summon Ant Colony, calling every ant in the caverns to her aid. But Lin Moyu didn't flinch. Instead, a strange smile crept across his face. Lin Moyu rarely smiled. When he did, something good always followed. The dozen skeletal warriors that had been attacking the queen vanished and reappeared around him in an instant, forming a ring between him and the oncoming ants. The skeletal mage pivoted and trained his weapon on the ant swarm. Atse, one concentrated volley tore into the air. One flying ant dropped instantly, followed by the thunderous roar of continuous fire. Corpses burst apart one after another. Each kill dumped massive experience into Lin Moyu's account. Ants kept coming, but the barrier held. No matter how many poured out, they couldn't break through. His experience meter shot up like a rocket. When he had entered the ant nest, it had been at 38%. Now it climbed past 65% and kept rising. If the bombardment continued like this, he'd outlevel everyone in no time. Then the queen's call faded and the reinforcements stopped. Lin Moyu couldn't help a private groan. What a pity. His experience bar climbed to 78%, a full 40% higher than when he first descended into the ant-hole. The skill faded, and the queen stretched as her recent injuries knit themselves back together. He hadn't expected it to have a healing effect. He waved his hand and ordered another all-out assault. The queen flapped her wings. The blows sliced through the skeletons like enormous blades, sending one skeleton warrior flying. It took only light damage, however, and bounced back into the fight. Before long, the queen herself was badly wounded again. Her active abilities appeared to be on cooldown, and she could no longer retaliate. Her injuries multiplied, and she screamed in pain. He poured everything into the attack. 130 skeleton warriors and 70 skeleton mages unleashed at full force. After only 10 seconds of relentless pressure, the queen ant crashed to the ground. System: Kill the Desert Queen. Experience plus 800,000 loot. Silver tier weapon: Queen Ant Spear. Strength plus 80. Constitution plus 80. Gun type skills 13%. Usable at level 20. Silver jewelry: Queen Ant Ring. Spirit plus 50. Constitution plus 50. Mental recovery speed plus 10%. Usable at level 20. Desert Queen Ant Eggs X3. Can be handed to a Beastmaster to hatch into Desert Queen Ants. Low-level monster crystal nucleus. Chapter 91. Since above doesn't work, let's go below. Desert Queen Eggs. Lin Moyu turned the small, translucent, egg-shaped object over in his palm. If he gave this to a Beastmaster, it could hatch into a Desert Queen. With a Queen Ant, you could spawn thousands of colonies. Whoever controlled the queen controlled the brood. The queen itself wasn't high level, but having one could still raise a Beastmaster's power. Lin Moyu decided it was more valuable than it looked. He would ask about its true worth once he got back. The 2 silver weapons were far less important to him. Better sold for cash. A minute after the queen's death, its body dissolved and a passage opened. The skeleton warrior slipped into it first. Once inside the ant nest, they continued moving underground, following a tunnel that angled upward. The way was clear. No monsters barred their path, and they kept rising until the sunlight reappeared. The coolness of the earth vanished. Scorching heat slammed back at them. The sky was a wash of yellow sand with no horizon in sight. It was even hotter here than before, as if the world itself were set to roast. Beyond the exit rose a steep mountain forest. A rocky ridge split the dungeon into separate sections, and to get this far, they'd had to fight their way through the 050 ant cave. 11 hours had passed since they entered the instance. The place was huge, and they'd already wasted too much time trying to find the correct path. The skeleton warriors pressed forward, urgency in every step. The longer they delayed, the slimmer their chances of getting the tyrant's heart. Then a beam of light suddenly stabbed down and struck Lin Moyu. Her bone armor flared, throwing up a blinding white radiance as it tried to absorb the blow. The impact was enormous. The skeletal plating began to flake and disintegrate. Startled, Lin Moyu took a quick step back. The beam slammed into the desert beyond, sending sand and debris spraying into the air. A second beam followed. The skeletons instantly formed a shield wall around her, bracing against whatever was coming. The source of the light lay along the same line of attack, a creature Lin Moyu had never seen before. It hovered about 10 meters off the ground, a massive orb roughly 2 meters across, dominated by a single eye that took up nearly 80% of its body. It was still 100 meters away. The monster fired from an incredible distance, and despite the dozens of skeletons the master had placed as a screen, its beam went straight for the summoner. Something about the creature was unusual. When the master was hit, a skeleton warrior immediately charged to intercept. The monster struck twice, but the blows proved ineffective. Frustrated, it tried to turn and run. It didn't get the chance. The skeleton mage opened fire. Kuyan's spells were relentless, and with Lin Moyu's detection technique tracking it, the creature had no escape. A status panel popped up in Lin Moyu's mind. Evil Eye Monster, Super Enhanced Elite, Level 28, Power, 500 Agility, 2000, Spirit, 6500, Physique, 3000, Skill, Destruction Ray. A mage, Lin Moyu muttered. The monster's enormous spirit score made its type obvious. Pure mage. Mage-type creatures weren't rare, but she had never seen one this one-sided. Its power was much lower than typical monsters at the same level, as if it had poured almost all its stats into spirit. The destruction ray explained why it had nearly shattered the skeleton's armor in a single blast. The problem was its range. The creature could attack from well over 100 meters away, and it could fly. Once it realized its strikes weren't doing much, it tried to flee. That might have been difficult to deal with, if Lin Moyu hadn't had so many skeleton mages at his command. Their firepower was terrifying. One coordinated salvo from the skeletons tore the blindfolded creature apart instantly. System: killed level 28 Magic Eye Monster. Experience plus 420,000. System: obtained Primary Magic Eye Crystal. Item info: Primary Magic Eye Crystal. Magical component. Alch. Mists can use it to craft items. Array mages can use it to form arrays. Lin Moyu glanced at the crystal and stowed it away. It might come in handy, but it was low level. Primary items were only useful up to around level 40. Above 40, they became intermediate, and past 70, they were considered advanced. Except for a few exceptions, anything labeled primary wasn't especially valuable. Having dealt with the monster and pocketed the crystal, Lin Moyu turned his attention back to the sky. As the skeleton warrior advanced, he kept his eyes on the sky. Soon a massive structure loomed into view, a castle, black and brooding on the horizon. Outside its protective walls, rows of huts fanned out in neat, military patterns. From a distance, Lin Moyu could make out a full camp, countless orcs moving in formation, drills and exercises on a wide training ground. Squads marched the same routes repeatedly. Groups practiced battlefield formations with the disciplined cadence of a standing army. For the first time, Lin Moyu felt the weight behind the title Tyrant. It wasn't just a powerful monster. It was a ruler, a warlord with the resources of a kingdom. The creatures in the barracks were not the ragged beasts he had met before. They had lion-like heads and manes bristling across their bodies, each clad in armor and towering over 3 meters tall. Their movements were coordinated and solemn, like a phalanx rather than a pack. That made them terrifying in a different way. Wild monsters could be funneled and picked off one by one. These troops could close ranks and hit in force. In a single engagement, you could easily face 10 or more of them at once. They were super-enhanced elites, far tougher than the nightmare difficulty dungeon monsters of the same level. A party of 40 might still struggle against them. Victory would demand flawless teamwork, top-tier equipment, and a full complement of skills. Unless he did what Lin Moyu did, just smash through it with overwhelming force, there was no way to win. The skeleton warriors surged forward in a charge, the skeleton mage close behind. A cluster of monsters hovered above the barracks and was spotted at once. Alarms blared. The gate of the barracks flew open, and more than 100 soldiers poured out. This was the kind of tactic Lin Moyu favored. At the same time, he couldn't help thinking what he'd do if he changed to a different class. A long-range profession could pull the beholder away and take it down first, then pick off the rest inside the barracks bit by bit. Charging straight into an orc army the way he was doing now would get him killed. Lin Moyu kept pace with the skeleton mage and activated his detection ability. The readout flashed up. Desert Lion Clan Warrior, Super Enhanced Elite Monster. Level 8 Power 6500, Agility 5000, Spirit 2000, Physique 5000, Skills none. Compared to the flying ants, these lion warriors were far more powerful and much quicker. The combination of high strength and high agility made them significantly more dangerous in combat. Their constitution was weaker than the ants, only 5,000. They didn't have the ants' heavy armor. Even glancing at the thin plating they wore, Lin Moyu thought a 5,000 physique looked a little underpowered. Before the skeleton warrior could even clash with the nearest lion, the skeleton mage's spells hit first. Explosion Flame, Ice Storm, Tornado Storm, 5 Thunderbolts. Fire, Ice, Wind, and Lightning, 4 elemental attacks erupted across the lion pack at once. The skeleton mage's spirit attribute was enormous. His skill damage was terrifying, even outclassing the skeleton warrior's blows. Under that concentrated barrage, several clan lions collapsed instantly. Lin Moyu stepped forward and raised his palm. Corpse burst. There was a deafening blast that cleared the surrounding area. Killed, level 28 Desert Lion Warrior, experience 3 nade. Obtained, Lion Skin Flea. Not a single lion within 60 meters remained standing. Experience points shot up like a rocket. Lion warriors kept pouring out of the barracks, but none of them could stop Lin Moyu's advance. Reinforcements came in waves and still made no difference. Then someone heaved a corpse into the air and detonated it, killing the hovering magic eye monster instantly. Lin Moyu felt the corpse explosion skill settle even more smoothly under his control. He could tell that after a few more uses, it might level up. The skeleton warriors surged into the barracks, paying no heed to the 10 clan fighters inside. They crashed through the defenders, rolling and crushing everything in their path. In the space of a breath, the monsters inside the barracks were wiped out. Suddenly, a storm of arrows descended from above. A line of archers had appeared on the castle walls. Desert Lion 1/6 Clan Archer, Superenhanced Elite Monster, Level 29, Power 5000, Agility 6500, Spirit 1500, Physique 4500, Skill 100 hits. The volley came down like a curtain of rain. The skeletons braced, blades raised to deflect the hail of shafts. The castle wall stood 50 meters high. The skeletons leapt, landed, and began to climb. The archers' volleys were brutal. After several assaults, the attack had been stalled halfway, arrow fire mowing down wave after wave. The skeleton mage took position beneath the castle walls and began to pick off the archers. Spells rained down and men fell one by one, but fresh shooters immediately moved up to take their places. When a dead archer slumped onto the battlement, he blocked Lin Moyu's line of sight. Without a clear target lock, Lin couldn't trigger corpse explosion. With the walls still held, the only option left was to force the front gate. A handful of skeleton warriors surged forward, hacking at the gate with heavy cleavers. The gate held firm. It wouldn't budge quickly under their blows. All the while, arrows kept raining down. "Since we can't take the walls, blow the gate," someone shouted. "All units, focus everything on the gate." Chapter 92, Single Kill World-Class Boss. Skeleton warriors clustered in front of the gate, battering at it relentlessly. They formed a human tower of bone, standing on one another's shoulders and heads to reach and strike as many spots as possible. The skeleton mages were split into 2 groups. Lightning and fire mages targeted the gate itself, while wind and ice mages, with their wide area skills, focused on the lion archers stationed on the city wall. If any of the other teams had watched Lin Moyu's approach, they would have laughed. There were special siege items designed to break gates much more efficiently. What he was doing worked, but it was a thankless way to do it. All the while, volleys of arrows rained down from the wall. If Lin Moyu had attacked with ordinary classes, the casualties would have been disastrous. Only the skeleton warriors, with their unnaturally high physique, could stand beneath that hail of arrows and keep pressing forward. Slowly, a niggling doubt grew in Lin Moyu's mind. This shouldn't be this hard. He took stock. His summons were holding, his tactics were sound, yet the resistance felt disproportionate. It wasn't just difficult for him. This fight was scaled in a way that would give any other profession a nightmarish time. Not even 40 people, hell, 100 couldn't do it. There has to be another way to take the city. I'll ask when I get back. The castle gate was far sturdier than any dungeon boss. The skeleton warriors battered at it for 10 minutes before it finally gave. Behind the gate, a unit of lion warriors had been waiting in formation. When the skeletons poured in like a pack of wolves, a skeleton mage's spell struck first, and a lion warrior went down with a scream. Lin Moyu raised his palm. Boom! His blast wiped the rest of them out. The skeletons surged up onto the walls and cut down the clan's archers. Even the heavily enhanced elite monsters, feared for their strength, could not withstand the smaller but ruthless skeleton force. Once the skeleton mage joined them on the battlements, the slaughter became one-sided. By the time Lin Moyu stepped into the castle, every lion warrior and lion archer lay dead. The skeletons pressed quickly down the main road. 13 hours had passed. At the heart of the castle, a massive, lion-like orc sat on a throne. A crown rested on his brow, and a crushing presence radiated from him. He looked every bit the invincible sovereign. Dozens of skeleton warriors clustered around him, but he didn't even glance their way. When he turned his gaze to Lin Moyu, that oppressive aura washed over him like a physical blow. His chest tightened, and he felt a wave of nausea and despair. Lin Moyu could only think, is this a world-class boss? He had never seen anything like it. Fear prickled up his spine, but there was no question of running. If he had to fight, he would. The Lion Clan tyrant flicked a hand, and the skeletons surged forward at once. At the same time, Lin Moyu activated his detection ability. The scan read, Lion Clan Tyrant, World Level Leader. Level 31. Strength 13,000. Agility 8,000. Intelligence 4,000. Physique 12,000. Skills: Hellroar, Angry Jump, Spinning Storm. Even though Lin Moyu had expected a powerful foe, seeing the numbers still stunned him. The tyrant's strength was a full 1,000 points higher than the skeleton warriors, which meant its attacks would hit far harder than anything he'd faced so far. The tyrant's agility was low, and its spirit stat was weak. It wasn't a magic-type monster, so that wasn't surprising. Its physique read 12,000, the same as a skeleton warrior. But because this was a boss, its actual HP was far higher than that physique number. As with previous bosses, it would be tough to put down. Tough or not, the sooner it died the better. Sorry, I'm in a hurry. A skeleton warrior charged straight at the tyrant, and the giant finally reacted. It lurched to its feet and slammed a massive foot down. The impact reverberated with a deafening bang. The earth cracked and several nearby skeletons were hurled away. The stomp carried a power attribute of 13,000, something the little skeletons couldn't stand up to, and those that were blown clear were left badly damaged. The tyrant towered at least 15 meters tall. The skeleton at its foot looked like nothing more than a black speck, almost absurdly out of proportion. More skeleton warriors surged forward, leaping high to reach it. They clung to the coarse hair on its body with one hand and slashed wildly with knives in the other. The skeleton mage's spells cascaded without pause. Brilliant sigils and runes hurled themselves at the tyrant. Each incantation detonated on impact. Firestorms erupted in violent blasts. Lightning hammered down in successive strikes. Ice sheathed half the beast's body, and a razor wind tornado cut through flesh and bone. The tyrant bellowed again and again. A massive axe materialized in his hand. With a single sweeping blow, he sent thousands of skeleton war kings flying. An entire house collapsed under the shockwave. So strong, Lin Moyu muttered, watching helplessly. He had no idea how any other raid team could hope to take down this boss. The tyrant was simply overwhelming. No knight could endure more than a few hits from him. Lin's palms flared. Crimson light flickered beneath his hood, coalescing into a scarlet shackle that snapped into being above the tyrant's head. An enormous movement-slowing debuff, displayed as a minus 150% modifier, sapped the tyrant's speed. With the boss staggered, the weight on the skeleton warriors eased for a moment. The tyrant felt the change. He lifted his head to the sky and unleashed a titanic roar, an ability, Hellscream. The thunder of it folded into a shockwave that ripped outward in an instant. A whole block of houses collapsed with a thunderous roar. Lin Moyu felt the shock hit him hard. His bone armor held for only 2 seconds before shattering. He reacted instantly, ducking behind a nearby skeleton mage and recasting bone armor over himself. The blast sent the skeleton warriors flying. Briefly, even those clinging to the tyrant were ripped off. Without warning, the tyrant leapt up and charged straight at Lin Moyu. Skill, angry jump. Lin Moyu's face tightened. If the tyrant connected, he might not die, but he would certainly take serious damage, and that damage would be transferred to the skeleton warriors and mages, likely crippling them. A skeleton mage to his side moved faster than the others and shoved Lin Moyu out of the tyrant's path. The tyrant slammed into the ground with a bone-jarring impact, blowing a huge crater and sending the skeleton mage flying. All the skeleton mages were hurt, though not fatally. Their constitution wasn't as robust as the warriors, but with around 6,000 physique, they wouldn't perish in seconds. Lin Moyu rolled aside, flames flaring into being in his palm. A burning spark arced up and struck the tyrant's head. Skill, soul flame. The tyrant unleashed an earth-shattering scream that seemed to claw at the very marrow of anyone who heard it. The whole castle shook. Even a world boss couldn't withstand an attack that struck straight at the soul. Lin Moyu used the moment to back away, putting more distance between himself and the looming foe. The skeleton warriors surged forward again, swarming and entangling the tyrant. If the enemy had no special skills, a handful of skeletons combined with Lin Moyu's slow curse would have been enough to grind the tyrant down. But the tyrant's abilities were brutal. Every one of his moves carried a concussive, disorienting effect that kept disrupting the bones and numbers of the undead. Thinking quickly, Lin Moyu spread the skeleton mages out to attack from all directions. With them flanking the tyrant, there was no way for him to activate a skill and completely escape their barrage. The tyrant swung his massive axe in thunderous chops and sweeping arcs, but the slow curse had dulled his reactions. His speed was severely reduced, and the danger he posed to the skeletons dropped markedly. Spells from the skeleton mages slammed into him like cannon shots, one after another. The tyrant's expression flickered. He seemed to sense the danger creeping in, as if he could feel the trap closing around him. The tyrant roared, snatched up its great axe, and spun. A gust of wind tore through the area and sent a skeleton warrior flying. What a pain! All of its abilities have knockback, Lin Moyu muttered, a little annoyed. Even so, he reminded himself that if the boss went down too easily, it wouldn't deserve the title of a world-class opponent. Other teams might fight differently, but Lin Moyu's approach was simple, push straight through. Few tricks, just overwhelming force. The knocked skeleton didn't get up to attack again. The tyrant wasn't finished. Tornadoes began to appear around it, whirling outward and shredding buildings in their path. They formed a spinning shield, intercepting and deflecting a raft of spells. As the tyrant kept rotating, the vortices multiplied and grew wilder until, with a deafening boom, they fanned out in every direction. Wherever the tornadoes passed, the ground seemed to be plowed over. Houses were splintered and thrown aside like matchsticks. A number of skeleton warriors didn't manage to dodge in time and were struck down by the onslaught. Bones scraped and split with a sickening grind, as if they might be torn apart any second. The soul flames coalesced into a spiraling tornado, and Lin Moyu watched as the skeletons were instantaneously battered and left badly wounded. He immediately recalled them back into the Lu 240 Huan space. He hadn't expected the tyrant's skill to be that powerful. Even the skeleton warriors were seriously hurt. No wonder, bosses that drop jewelry materials, like the Goblin King, always seem to have devastating abilities. Lin Moyu's palm stayed aflame as the soul fire lashed at the tyrant again and again, but while the tyrant remained inside his skill, he appeared unaffected. Only when the ability ended did all the accumulated damage detonate at once. An earth-shattering scream rolled through the dungeon as the impact hit. The skeleton warriors sprang back into the fray, relentless. Some leaped onto the tyrant's shoulders, others clambered onto his head or chest, their greatswords swinging wildly. The skeleton mages followed up with volleys of spells. "Skill!" Lin Moyu ordered. Red light blazed along the broadswords of every skeleton warrior at once. The command activated their power. Crazy strike. One single, crushing blow. The knife fell, spraying the tyrant's blood and shredding his flesh. The creature's screams abruptly cut off. Soul fire kept raining down relentlessly, striking the tyrant again and again, while the skeleton mage's spells grew ever more vicious. The tyrant fought back with everything he had, but it did little good. He triggered his powerful skills repeatedly, yet after the first time, Lin Moyu had already learned how to avoid them. He gave the tyrant no second chance. After 20 minutes of relentless combat, the tyrant finally collapsed in his own castle. Kill the Lion Clan Tyrant. Experience. Obtained gold level weapon, Tyrant Battle Axe. Obtained gold level weapon, Tyrant Dagger. Obtained gold level weapon, Tyrant Staff. Obtained Heart of the Tyrant. Tyrant Battle Axe, gold level weapon, strength plus 500, battle axe skills 25%, usable at level 30 and above. Tyrant Dagger, gold level weapon, agility 500, assassin skills 25%, usable at level 30 and above. Tyrant Staff, gold level weapon, spirit 500, mage skills usable at level 30 and above. Heart of the Tyrant, special item, required to craft a tyrant necklace. Chapter 93. This is pushing people to the ground and stomping on their faces. Lin Moyu let out a long, exhausted sigh. Finally, it was over. That had been the toughest boss he'd ever faced. World-class bosses were no joke. For a few moments, he barely registered the level difference between himself and his foe. He'd been level 20. No, his body was already glowing white. The experience from killing the tyrant had pushed him up to level 21. He checked his attributes by habit and couldn't hide a little surprise. Strength, agility, and constitution had each gone up by 30 points, now sitting at 330. Spirit had jumped by 200, reaching 1500. He could tell his growth curve had improved compared to before. His skills had shifted too. Soul Flame and his summoned skeleton warrior had both been upgraded, now level 21. The thing that really made him blink, though, was that his summoned skeleton mage had also reached level 21. It had leveled up at the same time he did. Could it be? He frowned, curious more than anything. The mage had always been a separate summon. He hadn't expected it to gain a level just because he did. Maybe the boss had dispersed experience to all nearby allies, summons included. Or perhaps some passive effect from the soul flame or the tyrant's corpse had triggered a synchronized upgrade. Whatever the reason, the result was the same. He and his summons were a step stronger. He let out a small, satisfied laugh. For now, Lin Moyu would take the win and the new levels, and maybe later figure out exactly how the summons had advanced with him. For the moment, he felt unstoppable enough to go out and trample anyone who stood in his way. Could it be that once a skill is fully learned, it automatically upgrades when your level increases? The thought popped into Lin Moyu's head and made him startle and feel a cold prickle along his spine. If that were true, he needed to max out a few skills right away. If he waited until his level rose, it would only get harder to train them. He'd have to go back to the Tyrant Desert and rely on the desert fruits to cultivate his abilities again. He was still thinking this when the dungeon hall suddenly erupted in sound. Bells chimed, one after another, 6 clear notes. 3 chimes was already a new record for an ordinary dungeon. 6 chimes meant a brand new record for a major dungeon. No one was left outside the hall. Hundreds of people had poured in, and hundreds of eyes were fixed on the luminous curtain of the Tyrant Desert dungeon. Even those who were elsewhere were teleporting in, rushing toward the hall at the call of the crowd inside. Come see! Come see! They shouted, drawing everyone closer. I didn't expect the team from Bailey College to actually set a new record. It's a miracle, only 14 hours since they went in. Someone chuckled. It might not even be the college team that set it. Yeah, I heard Lin Moyu went in too. Maybe he's the one who broke the record. Lin Moyu? Who's that? Where did this kid come from? What team does he even lead? Scoffed a haughty voice as a group entered the dungeon hall. They all wore the same uniforms, the college emblem stitched on their chests. It's Bailey Sheng from Bailey College, the principal's grandson, Bailey Sheng. Bailey Sheng walked in at the head of the group, chest proud, eyes cold. Which college did you say Lin Moyu is from? He asked, voice ice. I've never heard of him. What kind of dungeon did he bring down? His tone was dripping with contempt. From the back, a deeper voice piped up, amused. Lin Moyu went in alone. He soloed it, wiped the whole thing by himself. Solo? Bailey Sheng exploded into wild laughter. Are you kidding me? His grin turned hard. The laughter died quickly. His eyes flashed dangerously. He looked like a man ready to throw himself at anyone who dared contradict him. The man looked startled for a moment, but pushed his shock down and forced himself to speak. Honestly, Lin Moyu went into the dungeon by himself. Everyone saw it. Yes, he went in alone and never came out. Is Bailey College still pretending dungeoning isn't allowed? Another voice sneered. Bailey Sheng frowned. Lin Moyu? Who is that? Someone nearby leaned in and whispered, I heard he set 2 new records in the dungeon hall over the past 2 days. They were both low-level runs, Mutant Forest and the Spider Lair. Some people even say he has ties to Lord Baishan, another added. Bailey Sheng glanced at the 2 replay feeds and froze. The record scores were absurdly high, higher than he expected. Putting the pieces together made him even more uneasy. Lin Moyu's level was only around 20, maybe at most 22. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been allowed into the Spider Lair at all. A corner of Bailey Sheng's mouth curled with contempt. A kid capped at 22, soloing a large-scale instance? He clearly doesn't understand how things work. He waved the idea off as nothing more than sensationalism, but the murmurs around him suggested the seed of doubt had already been planted. Don't go thinking you're invincible just because you got lucky twice, someone sneered. What kind of monsters are in that big dungeon? Who actually thinks it can be soloed? Maybe he just camped out in there, another added, and most people nodded along. The students from Bailey College wore smug smiles. Then a clear voice cut through the chatter. I believe Lin Moyu could solo it. Bailey Sheng glanced over and saw who'd spoken. A girl, Shu Han, and she wasn't unattractive. He didn't want to lose his temper with a woman, so he only snorted. What do you know? I believe in Lin Moyu, Shu Han replied coolly. Bailey Sheng scoffed. You're gullible, but she simply snorted and turned away. At that moment, a golden light burst from the tyrant dungeon and flooded the entire palace. The glow struck the instance's projection screen, and a line of words appeared. Tyrant's heart has dropped. A timestamp followed. Another line explained that the tyrant's heart could not drop again for 1 year. When that year passed, the notice would vanish, and the heart could drop once more. The announcement sent the crowd into an uproar. We actually got the tyrant's heart. Lucky. It wasn't luck, someone snapped back. You can only get the tyrant's heart if you killed the boss within an hour. No way that was just chance. Bailey Sheng threw his head back and laughed. Well done. Well done. I told you, our Bailey Academy didn't just come to set a new record, he added. Proud as can be, we came to take home the tyrant's heart. A burst of cheers went up from the students. Not only had their academy broken the record, they'd claimed the boss's heart as a trophy. Faces around Bailey Academy were alight with excitement. In the midst of the jubilation, Bailey Sheng basked in it, already picturing the academy's name engraved in glory. Then the light curtain flickered and refreshed. The projected ranking slipped down. First place displaced to second. A new entry appeared, and the room went silent as every eye read the name on the screen. Lin Moyu, level 21, 14 hours, 11 minutes, 43 seconds. The expression on Bailey Sheng's face froze. His smile dropped away as if someone had pulled the rug out from under him. The pride that had been swelling moments before collapsed into stunned disbelief. It felt, for a heartbeat, as if everyone around him were sneering. For a moment, Bailey Sheng had forgotten Lin Moyu existed. Now Lin Moyu's name burned at the top of the leaderboard, and the students' celebration changed pitch from triumph to stunned admiration. Shame, embarrassment, fury. Bailey Sheng felt them all at once, a bitter knot in his chest. Lin Moyu, who does he think he is? He fumed, clenching his fists and blaming everything on him. A flash of light appeared at the dungeon entrance as someone stepped out. Lin Moyu emerged and immediately felt uneasy. People were crowded around him, staring. One pair of eyes burned with anger, but there was a strange weariness beneath the rage, as if the person was fighting between outrage and resignation. Are you Lin Moyu? Someone called. Lin Moyu frowned. He didn't recognize the questioner. Did you do this to him? Another voice demanded from the crowd. None of that mattered right now. He had just left the dungeon. The first priority was to turn in the quest, to the White God, as usual. Lin Moyu activated his teleportation stone and left the dungeon hall. He wouldn't hang around to be gawked at. He wasn't some performer at an amusement park. Bailey Sheng watched, angrier than ever, as Lin Moyu ignored him completely. He couldn't believe how casually he'd been dismissed. He was seething, face flushed. "We'll settle this," he snapped. Then, without another word, he activated his teleportation stone and left. The rest of his squad followed suit. They couldn't stay, humiliated, avoiding everyone's eyes. They vanished as quickly as they could. Around them, people breathed out in relief. "Finally gone," someone muttered. "Bailey College really lost face this time. Just wait. Tomorrow this will be all over the school. Bailey College is going to be infamous." Serves them right. They made such a big show of themselves, dragged everyone along, tens, maybe hundreds of people, and now look. Mr. Lin just pinned their reputation to the ground and stomped on it. "Hey, did you hear? The boss only hit level 21 after clearing that dungeon. That means he was still level 20 when he went in," Hao Wang said, eyes wide. "A level 20 solo run on a major dungeon, is that even possible for a human? Is he really a necromancer? Are those classes that powerful? Even if the class's strength is exaggerated, this is ridiculous. He must have awakened some talent, not the ordinary kind." Shu Han was in high spirits. She practically radiated smugness, as if she enjoyed the victory even more than Lin Moyu did. "Fine," she said with a giggle. "I'll just tell them you're all right," then bounced off toward the dungeon entrance. As soon as Lin Moyu returned to the dorms, he pinged Bai Yuan on the comm. A lazy voice answered, "What's up? Can't find the team?" Bai sounding like he was half asleep. Lin lowered his voice. "I picked up the tyrant's heart." There was a beat of silence, then Bai's tone snapped awake. "Say that again." "I picked up the tyrant's heart," Lin repeated. No sooner had he said it than the mission was reassigned to Bai. "Where are you?" Bai asked. "In the dormitory." "Head to the gate of the dormitory area," Bai said. "Okay." Chapter 94, The Place to Earn Contribution Points, Yuan Battlefield. He had just finished his conversation with Bai Yuan when his communicator buzzed. A system message flashed. New record in the Tyrant Desert Dungeon created. Reward 5,000 points and 30 contribution points. One time only. Lin Moyu smiled faintly. Big dungeons really did pay better. Pity the bonus could only be claimed once. He was still standing at the dormitory door when Bai Yuan arrived. Before Lin could say anything, Bai reached out, grabbed him, and the two of them disappeared in an instant. Bai Yuan had used a teleportation stone. The next moment, Lin found himself standing outside a small courtyard set on a hillside. It was quiet and secluded, wrapped in a grove of bamboo. A gentle breeze stirred the leaves. The air smelled faintly of green stalks and earth. Night had fallen. The moon hung bright, and the stars were scattered across the sky. Bamboo shoots grew inside the courtyard, and small magical lamps were hung among them, casting a soft, diffused light that barely touched the paving stones. The whole scene felt like a carefully composed painting, revealing the refined taste of the place's owner. Lin Moyu stood there for a long beat, a little dazed. He liked this kind of house very much. The peacefulness, the subtle lighting, the rustle of bamboo, it all struck a chord with him. Bai Yuan smiled in satisfaction at Lin Moyu's reaction. "This is my house. Not bad, right?" "Very nice," Lin Moyu admitted, nodding. In an age overrun by monsters and savage beasts, almost nobody lived out in the wild anymore. Everyone clustered inside walled cities under the protection of the city guard. The open country was simply too dangerous. Only people like Bai Yuan still made their homes beyond the walls. "Come in," Bai Yuan said with a chuckle, and led the way. They passed through the front yard without entering the house and went straight to the backyard. The air there carried the scent of brewing tea, and at a small table sat a middle-aged man in a scholar's robe, calm and composed. Lin Moyu's eyes widened in respect. He bowed deeply. "Pleased to meet you, Mr. Meng," he said. Meng Anwen was a household name across the Shengxia Empire, on par with Baishen. A god-level formation master and one of the realm's most powerful practitioners, he was honorably known as Mr. Meng. He had once rendered extraordinary service to the Empire, deeds notable enough to be written into the history books. Lin Moyu had seen Meng Anwen's photos in books and read about his exploits. He felt a quiet respect for the man as he stepped into the room. Meng Anwen gave him a nod and a smile. Come, sit. Have some tea. Bai Yuan waved him off. Don't be so formal. Old Meng's a chatterbox. Then, turning to Lin Moyu, he added, Show us the tyrant's heart. Lin Moyu produced the object. It looked like a real heart, slightly soft, almost as if it were alive. Meng Anwen leaned forward, examined it closely, and murmured, It really is the tyrant's heart. Bai Yuan's eyes went to Lin Moyu. You went in alone? Lin Moyu nodded. Solo. Bai's face registered surprise and confusion. How did you manage to do it by yourself? Lin Moyu hesitated, unsure how to explain. I just did, he said simply. Bai realized his question sounded a little foolish and fell silent. Meng Anwen, curious, asked, How long did it take you? 14 hours to clear it, Lin Moyu answered honestly. Shock crossed Bai Yuan's face. 14 hours. That speed was astonishing. By himself, Lin Moyu's combat capability must rival a 40-person team, and he had been only level 20 when he entered the dungeon. To possess that level of power at 20, it meant he would only become more formidable from here. If you can do 3 turns, Bai Yuan felt a small thrill at the thought. Beside him, Meng Anwen remained composed, saying nothing more than, Not bad, old Bai. I'll keep my promise. That was never in doubt. Bai Yuan produced a talisman and handed it to Lin Moyu. It was an elementary cooling talisman, the same kind Lin Moyu had seen before. This is yours now. If you want to upgrade it to an intermediate or advanced cooling talisman, that's something I can teach you. Lin Moyu knew there was no such thing as a free gift. He brightened immediately. What do you want in return, Master Bai? Bai Yuan was pleased by the quick response. No rush. Let me ask you something first. Do you want to get into Chuang Theological Seminary? Lin Moyu's answer was soft but certain. Yes. Bai gave a little chuckle. I know you level up quickly. Your rank isn't the problem. What you lack are contribution points. Lin Moyu nodded. Yes, Bai Yuan had expected that. A sly glint crossed his eyes. Then can you earn 1,000 contribution points? Lin Moyu hesitated and shook his head. He wasn't sure he could. He only had 90 contribution points now. Still a long way from the 1,000 required to get into the Creation Theological Academy. Not even a 10th. His plan was to clear every dungeon entry he could find in the dungeon hall, but he had no real sense of how many points that would net him. If each dungeon only awarded 5 to 10 points, even setting new records on every dungeon under level 30 wouldn't come close. Have you heard of the Yuan battlefield? Bai Yuan asked. Yuan battlefield? Lin Moyu shook his head. He hadn't. Bai Yuan took a sip of tea and explained, There are a lot of valuable things in the Yuan battlefield you can trade for contribution points. The school also runs a station there. They post assignments, and completing those tasks gives contribution points directly. So if I want points fast, I should go to the Yuan battlefield, Lin Moyu said quietly, his eyes brightening. It was clear he was interested. Bai Yuan watched Lin Moyu's face carefully. He could tell he'd piqued his interest, so he shifted the subject. The Yuan battleground isn't somewhere just anyone can go. It's like a dungeon palace. You need the right credentials. How do I get them? Lin Moyu asked. I can give you the qualification, Bai replied. On one condition? Lin Moyu was blunt. After the several times they dealt with each other, he knew Bai's style. Nothing came free. You don't hand out favors without strings attached. Bai Yuan laughed softly. Sharp. The Yuan battleground holds a lot of valuable things. Dungeons, rare resources, sometimes natural mysteries. The dungeons there are unusual. The level restrictions are very loose. You can enter even around level 5, up or down. It's the same as that tyrant desert dungeon you just cleared. You go into the battleground, bring back materials from the dungeons, and I'll sponsor your entry. He produced a small list. I've already written down the materials I need. He smiled with the slow, sly confidence of someone who expected compliance rather than refusal. The communicator buzzed in Lin Moyu's hand and a mission list flashed across the screen. All of the items were dragon-related. Dragon hearts, 10. Essence of dragon blood, 10 drops. Dragon horns, 10. Crystal nuclei of the dragon lineage, 5. Several of the required materials were clearly tied to the dragon people. That could only mean the dungeon had something to do with the dragon clan. Lin Moyu stared at Bai Yuan, speechless. Dragons were terrifyingly strong, and he was only level 21. Why would they expect him to kill dragons? That was practically a death sentence. Bai Yuan waved off his concern. Relax. They're not real dragons. It's a tribe of orcs called the Dragon Clan. More like the Lion Clan back in the Tyrant Desert. Same naming, different reality. Hearing that, Lin Moyu relaxed a little and nodded. With Bai Yuan's position and experience, he trusted the explanation. Does the cooling talisman work there? He asked. Yes, Bai Yuan replied. The talisman still functions in that dungeon. And if it runs out of charges? Lin Moyu pressed. Bai Yuan checked quickly. The main cooling talisman is fully charged now. You can use it 10 times. Oh, once those charges are spent, it will need to be recharged. This is simple, Bai Yuan said. There are a few ways to do it. The easiest is to go back to the Academy's alchemy hall, find the master alchemist, and pay with your points. He stroked his chin as he listed the alternatives. You can also hire an alchemist outside the school and pay in gold, but that depends on whether they're willing. Charging the amulet yourself requires a lot of materials, which also cost money. There are certain special ingredients that can recharge a cooling amulet directly, but those are extremely rare. All things considered, returning to the school and spending points is the most convenient option. Any other questions? Lin Moyu hesitated for a moment. Master Baishan, do you know anything about the desert fruit? Bai Yuan's eyes widened. You went into the Tyrant Desert and found a desert fruit? I did. Bai Yuan laughed out loud. You're incredibly lucky. Those are really hard to come by. It's supposed to be great for cultivating skills. Have you tried it? Lin Moyu asked softly. I have, but only a little, Bai Yuan admitted. He didn't bother denying it. The desert fruit really was exceptional. He ruffled Lin Moyu's hair. Don't get your hopes up. It's rare. There's no guarantee you'd find one, even if you went in 10 times. The skill training room isn't as good as the desert fruit, but it's still useful, Bai went on. After the opening ceremony, I'll send you to the Yuan battlefield. Lin Moyu tilted his head. If I train a skill up to its maximum in the room, will it automatically upgrade when I level up? Bai Yuan blinked. No, there's no such shortcut. Skills don't upgrade that way. You actually have to practice them. Lin Moyu seemed to take that in and dropped the line of questioning. He moved on to other questions instead, and Bai answered each one plainly. He was well-informed and thorough. To him, Lin's questions were just elementary. After Lin Moyu left, Bai Yuan idly turned the tyrant's heart over in his hands. Heh, he said. The tyrant's heart, not bad at all, a fine piece of equipment. The tyrant's heart did look like a heart, but at its core was a crystal nucleus. It could be used to craft boss-tier jewelry and tyrant necklaces. Meng Anwen frowned. Is it really wise to bring him to the Yuan battlefield so soon? Bai Yuan chuckled. You saw what he did. He can single-handedly generate large-scale dungeons. That shows his strength is on par with some pros just entering the second tier. It's better to have him train at the battlefield now. Meng Anwen's voice went low. So you really mean to train him? Bai Yuan tilted his head and smiled. Why not? The old man trains his sister, so I'll train this one. Let's see whose pupil turns out stronger. Meng Anwen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. To outsiders, the imposing Baishan could sometimes look like a child. Shouldn't you warn him that the Yuan battlefield is dangerous? Meng Anwen asked. If he needs to learn, he'll learn when we get there, Bai Yuan said lightly. What's the use of telling him now? Chapter 95. He went in again? After returning to the dormitory, Lin Moyu raised 5 skeleton warriors and then collapsed into sleep. He'd been fighting in the dungeon for more than 10 hours straight, roasted by the desert sun and completely spent, both physically and mentally. He didn't even feel like meditating. He'd traded the tyrant's heart he got from Bai Yuan for a primary cooling amulet and had learned about the Yuan battlefield and how to earn contribution points. Now he knew what he needed to do next. In no time, he was out cold, breathing evenly, a faint smile at the corner of his mouth as he sank into a pleasant dream. The dungeon hall, however, stayed lively. People kept coming and going, the traffic at night as busy as during the day. A lot of players preferred to run dungeons after dark, forming teams to farm experience and books. As the doors opened and the lanterns threw their glow, one group after another appeared in the hall, until 40 people had poured out of the dungeon. We're back, the lead knight shouted, his face alight with excitement from a hard-won fight. The rest of his team echoed his exhilaration. Everybody was thrilled. "Hey, the Bailey Academy people are back. They did it. So what? They survived. That's what matters." They cheered among themselves. Captain Cheng Chuyang strode ahead, chest swollen with pride. He swept his gaze over his teammates. "We completed the Tyrant Desert Dungeon in 15 hours and 58 minutes, a new record. Bailey Academy, mighty." The group erupted and shouted praise. Then someone on the edge of the crowd pointed at the shimmering display that had been counting their run since they entered the dungeon. "Captain, something's wrong." Cheng Chuyang frowned and turned. The light screen had been tracking every important event, and now a new message blinked across it. The heart of the tyrant had dropped. Their celebration faltered. "We didn't get the heart. Who did?" They all checked the rankings at once. Bailey Academy's time was listed proudly, but it wasn't at the top. They were second. First place read, Lin Moyu, level 21, 14 hours 11 minutes 43 seconds. A cold shock ran through Cheng Chiang. One person, a solo player, had beaten their entire team, and by nearly 2 hours. His body went rigid. His voice dropped to a whisper. One person. 21 levels. 14 hours. He thought of the person who had entered the dungeon before them, and a chill went straight to his bones. This couldn't be real. Cheng Chuyang let out a strangled cry. He couldn't believe it. His team had done everything right. Perfect class composition, top-tier gear, coordinated commands. It had taken them 16 hours of grueling effort to bring down the boss. They hadn't gotten the heart of a tyrant, but they had still shattered the previous record. That should have been something to be proud of. Instead, all of their work was being eclipsed by a single man. How was that possible? "How can this be?" he repeated, near hysterical. "How can this be?" Around the dungeon hall, people watched with amused smiles. Members of Bailey College felt humiliated, trampled by the one man's achievement, by Lin Moyu. Faces burned with shame. Some bowed their heads. "Captain, let's go," someone said quietly. "Let's head back," another added. "We'll talk about it later." At last, Cheng Chuyang forced himself to calm down. He cast one lingering, reluctant look at the shimmering exit curtain of the dungeon, then turned away. "Leave." The students from Bailey College activated their teleportation stone and vanished in an instant. Laughter erupted through the dungeon hall. Who would have thought Bailey College would get slapped in the face twice in one day? Lin Moyu didn't even argue. He just did it. "Have you seen Bailey Sheng's face today? It was priceless. He came in so high and mighty and walked out humiliated. Their cheeks might not be bruised, but their pride sure is." Everyone watched the scene like it was a play. By tomorrow, the whole academy would be buzzing about this. Bailey College would become infamous. Bailey Sheng was known for his arrogance. His grandfather was the college dean, and he never treated ordinary students seriously. Showing up so grandly and leaving in disgrace gave everyone something to relish. Lin Moyu slept through the commotion. He woke naturally at 10 in the morning, his stomach growling, feeling completely refreshed. Except for his mental power, which hadn't fully recovered, everything else had returned to peak condition. Lin Moyu stretched, washed up, and ate. He glanced at the large rations stored in his inventory and, for the 100th time, thought of Zhong Yi, that mischievous little elf girl. He wondered where she had wandered off to. When he finished, Lin Moyu activated his teleportation stone and appeared in the dungeon hall. Bai Yuan had warned him that desert fruits could only be stumbled upon, not hunted for, but Lin Moyu wanted to try his luck anyway. If he could find a desert fruit, he might be able to push his slow curse and bone armor skills to full level in a short time. Bai Yuan had also said that apart from innate abilities, most skills didn't automatically improve as you leveled up. You had to cultivate them yourself. Yet Lin Moyu remembered how his summoned skeleton mage skill, after it reached its cap, had upgraded along with his own level. He wasn't sure whether that was a quirk of the summoned skeleton mage skill itself or something special about his profession. He intended to test it again. A voice cut through his thoughts. "You are Lin Moyu?" Startled, he looked up and saw someone standing at the entrance to the dungeon hall, watching him. Lin Moyu didn't recognize the man, so he gave a quiet hum. "What is it?" The man said. "Senior Bailey Sheng wants to see you. Come with me." There was an arrogance in his tone. From Lin Moyu's clothes, he'd already decided the young man wasn't from the academy's departments, but just an ordinary student, and his pride only grew. Lin Moyu glanced at him, thinking the man was out of his depth, and walked past into the dungeon hall. A soft voice nearby said, "Let him handle it himself." The man's eyes widened at being ignored. Enraged, he barked, "Who do you think you are, coming in here? Do you even know who Bai Li Sheng is?" "I don't," Lin Moyu replied coolly, and kept walking. He stopped in front of the Tyrant Desert instance. When he tried to enter, the cooldown read 240 hours, 10 full days. That was impossible to wait for. Without hesitation, he spent 2,000 points to cancel the cooldown and another 500 points to enter the instance. He still had 125,000 points left. He was more than able to afford it. The man's face went beet red, then ashen, and he ground his teeth in fury. Lin Moyu showed no mercy. As soon as he entered the Desert of Tyrants, everyone watching reacted with surprise. "Hey, Lin Moyu's gone in again. He's going to break the record again, isn't he?" It could happen. He set records in the Mutant Forest and the Spider's Lair, 2 in a row. The first time was one thing, but doing it again doesn't leave anyone a chance. I get the first time not understanding the dungeon. The second time, once you've got it down, your score is bound to be higher. Voices buzzed back and forth, full of curiosity and expectation. People wanted to see whether Lin Moyu would set another new record. Large-scale dungeons aren't like standard ones. A run can stretch past 10 hours, so all anyone could do was wait for the bell to ring and the results to come in. For some reason, everyone watching was confident Lin Moyu would top himself. A man teleported away the moment Lin Moyu stepped inside. I returned to Bailey College and ran straight into Bai Li Sheng. Lin Moyu refused to come, he said. He told him, "If you want to see him, go there yourself." Bai Li Sheng sat in the academy with a scowl. "What a pompous idiot." "Yeah, so rude," someone agreed. Bai Li snorted. "Don't think you're hot stuff just because you cleared the Tyrant Desert on your own. It's still a low-level manual at the end of the day. He doesn't understand what happens after the second transformation. A profession that's feared before the second transformation can become useless afterward. I invited him here to save his face, to give him a chance. If that's the case, forget him. If you see him outside, teach him a lesson." Bailey's reputation for arrogance was well known across the academy. The disgraceful scene at Bailey College yesterday had already spread through the school by morning. Bailey didn't even have the face to show his face around. He'd been itching to teach Lin Moyu a lesson and salvage his pride, ideally by bringing Lin Moyu under his wing, but Lin Moyu hadn't given him the chance. In the academy, he couldn't openly challenge Lin. Even if his grandfather was the dean, no one could guarantee his safety. Out in the wild, though, that was another story. The Tyrant Desert is the same as always. Yellow sand whipped through the air and the sun beat down mercilessly. "I hope the map isn't random," he muttered. At once, 135 skeleton warriors and 70 skeleton mages materialized and set off in the same direction. Nearly every desert ghost tree along their path was felled instantly. The skeleton warriors didn't hold back, unleashing brutal close-quarters attacks, while the skeleton mages moved faster and struck from afar. Monsters dropped one after another in seconds. In just over an hour, the oasis came into view on the horizon. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "The map still hasn't switched to 6, he said. Chapter 96, Desert Fruit, Hard to Find. The skeleton warriors surged toward the oasis as one. Predictably, a pack of giant desert scorpions came rushing to meet them. The skeletons didn't attack. Instead, one of them hooked a scorpion and dragged it, running along the oasis channel as bait. The hooked scorpion kept up a relentless pursuit, and the skeleton adjusted its pace so it stayed level with the attacker. As they ran, more and more scorpions joined the chase. The horde swelled with every dune they passed. Lin Moyu followed behind the column at a distance of about 1,000 meters, keeping the group in sight without getting too close. After half an hour of that tense, measured running, he finally saw the young ants ahead, the objective at last. He quickened his pace and closed the gap. At his signal, the skeletons halted and turned to fight. The giant desert scorpions charged, but the skeletons cut them down with brutal efficiency. The difference in strength was overwhelming. By the time Lin Moyu reached the scene, a third of the scorpions lay dead, their shells shattered under the skeleton's blades. Then, without warning, a series of explosions ripped through the sand. Boom, boom, boom. Blasts of yellow sand hurled into the air, blotting out the sky for a moment as the battle's chaos spiked anew. Corpse burst. Lin Moyu kept casting without a break, chanting the skill over and over. He wasn't drawing on his external spiritual energy, yet the relentless repetitions still exhausted his mind. He burned through about a third of his mental power. The giant desert scorpion was already dead, but he continued. He was practicing the technique. The 693 corpse burst could only be advanced in real combat. By the end of the last fight, he had already felt the skill nearing an upgrade. This time, he used it 40 times in succession and finally pushed it over the edge. Corpse burst, level 3. Detonate a corpse, inflicting damage equal to 20% of the corpse's HP to enemies within 3 meters. The level up widened and strengthened the ability. With his talent enhancements factored in, the effective radius ballooned to 100 meters, and the damage multiplier jumped to 600% of the corpse's HP. The attack power had increased dramatically. Before they reached the ant cave, Lin Moyu had noticed the cactus again. This time it bore no fruit. Bai Yuan shrugged and said some things you simply stumble upon. You can't make them happen. Lin Moyu felt a brief sting of disappointment, but it evaporated the next second as the thrill of the new power settled in. Then just treat it as leveling. Don't waste points. My skeleton surged into the ant nest. I had been here once before, so I didn't need to hunt for the exit this time. The group moved almost in a straight line, cutting directly toward the queen's chamber. A swarm of ants fell in behind us. Larvae, workers, soldiers, flyers, hundreds of them. I slipped the bone armor on and hung back out of sight. When the party reached the queen's lair, the ants halted outside, unwilling to cross into the boss's territory. Many dungeons worked like that. Monsters rarely entered the boss's inner domain, so it wasn't unexpected. My skeleton warriors held the junction and fought to keep the attackers at bay until I stepped forward and ended the skirmish with corpse burst. Notifications scrolled across my view as the corpses exploded and experience trickled in. I smiled to myself. This was only a minor wave of XP. Between this and the desert giant scorpion encounter, those 2 corpse waves had already given me an extra 15% experience. That was just a warm-up. The real feast hadn't even started. Lin Moyu downed a low-grade spirit potion and recovered 100 points of spirit power. It wasn't huge, but 100 spirit points was enough to trigger 10 corpse bursts or to cast bone armor on himself several times. After clearing out the remaining mobs, the team charged into the queen's chamber and surged toward the 4 personal guards clustered around the ant queen. "Fire!" came the order. Under concentrated assault, 1 guard was cut down within seconds. The other 3 instantly shifted into a defensive stance. Their carapaces shimmered with a glossy sheen as their armor skills activated, pushing their defenses to extreme levels. But the skeleton warriors never stopped attacking. Wind, fire, lightning, and ice strikes slammed into the queen's guards simultaneously, hammering away at those defensive buffs until they began to crumble. The queen flapped her wings and unleashed a piercing sonic scream. They'd already felt the sting of the queen ant's sonic attack once before. Its range was wide, but its raw power was limited. Lin Moyu's bone armor flickered under the assault, but held firm, completely negating the effect. The same went even more so for the skeleton warriors, who shrugged off the scream as if it were nothing. You couldn't say the effort had been useless, only that it hadn't been decisive. The skeleton warriors kept coming, and within 10 seconds the gleam on the 3 ant queen guards had already dulled. The queen beat her wings again. Skill, storm blow. A violent gust roared through the chamber, knocking skeletons aside in a sudden surge. They slammed into the ground, scrambled up, and charged right back into the fray without slowing. One of the skeleton mages threw himself in front of Lin Moyu like a living shield. The faint protective glow around the ant queen's bodyguards was wavering. It looked as if it would fade any second. Lin Moyu gave the order without speaking. The skeleton warriors unleashed their abilities in unison. Skill, frenzied strike. In an instant, the guards' defenses shattered. The 3 personal guards of the Ant Queen were cut down, maimed, and broken almost at once. The skeleton mage added his own attack, and a cascade of brilliant spell effects rained down. Lin Moyu raised his palm. Skill! Corpse burst! Boom! 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 4 concussive explosions tore through the cave, each blast folding into the next as the chamber filled with thunder and dust. The Ant Queen screamed as the explosion struck, then immediately curled up. In that contracted state, her wounds began to knit together at an alarming speed. Screams echoed through the ant cavern, a raw, keening chorus that Lin Moyu listened to with a smile. Unlike the last time, he wasn't going to clear the nest himself. The swarm inside would be enormous. He stayed back and waited for them to come to the entrance on their own. A squad of skeleton warriors had already returned and taken positions before him. 10 seconds later, the ground began to ripple with movement. A dense cascade of crawling sounds came from the cave, pierced by high, metallic shrieks that made the skin crawl. Ants were pouring out from every tunnel, masses crawling along the floor while winged ants filled the air. Lin Moyu had no idea how many there were. After another 2 seconds, the swarm closed to within 20 meters of him. "Do it," he ordered. At his command, the skeleton warriors surged forward, and the skeleton mage was even quicker. The mage's hands wove through the air, and at once, dozens of spells erupted in a synchronized volley. For a while, the cave was lit with flickering colors. Screams echoed through the ant colony, and some ants dropped dead where they stood. Lin Moyu locked onto his target and activated his skill, Corpse Burst. Explosions rolled through the chamber in a steady rhythm, making the whole cave tremble. He hadn't used the skill recklessly. He waited until enough ants had piled up, then detonated. Corpses began to accumulate into mounds. Ants from the rear knocked those mounds aside and surged forward, trampling over their fallen kin as they charged. Under the Queen's summons, they showed no fear of death. Wave after wave fell, and experience points came pouring in. In the blink of an eye, his experience gauge jumped to 50%. It was astonishingly fast, but after level 21, the pace would slow again. He wouldn't get the big 5-level leaps he used to. Progression would be at least 10% slower. If he cleared the Tyrant Desert dungeon next, he might push his experience past 85%, but it would only get harder after that. "It's a bit slow," Lin Moyu muttered, unable to help a sigh. If anyone else had heard that, they'd have been stunned. Most people take a year, sometimes 2 or even 3, to go from level 20 to 30. At Lin Moyu's pace, he'd hit 30 in a month or 2 at most. Anything slower would be unimaginable. He'd leave everyone else in the dust. Lin Moyu tore through the monsters in an instant. 10 minutes later, the onslaught finally stopped. All the ant infiltrators that had slipped through were dead. The Queen's screams faded. Her crouch relaxed and she straightened, the worst of her injuries patched up. But she barely had a moment to recover before a new wave struck. 135 skeleton warriors surged forward in perfect unison, swords flashing as they unleashed their skills. They attacked from every angle, underneath her, on her back, on her head, swarming the already injured Queen. She went from wounded to near death in a heartbeat. Then the skeleton mages poured in with their spells, finishing the job. The Ant Queen was killed almost instantly, far more decisively than last time. She didn't even get a chance to use her abilities. Kill the Desert Queen, experience 800, acquired silver weapon, Ant Queen's sword, 1.7, acquired silver jewelry, Queen Ant ring, obtained low-level monster crystal nucleus, Queen Ant sword, silver tier weapon, strength 80, constitution 80, sword skill effectiveness plus 13%, usable at level 20. Queen Ant ring, silver tier jewelry, spirit 50, constitution 50, mental recovery speed plus 10%, usable at level 20. The haul wasn't as good as last time. No Desert Queen eggs this run. Stepping over the corpse of the Queen Ant, Lin Moyu left the ant cave and entered the clan's territory. A towering castle loomed ahead, its gate reinforced and intimidating. He knew that to get that gate open properly, he'd need siege equipment, and the exchange didn't sell that kind of gear. He could either gather materials and find a blacksmith to forge it, or improvise. Lin Moyu didn't have the luxury of time. He chose the crude but fast solution. He ordered his skeleton warrior to smash through the door. It would cost a few minutes at most. It had only been 5 hours since he entered the instance, already more than twice as fast as his last attempt. He couldn't afford to waste even a moment. "World-class boss, here I come again," Lin Moyu shouted. With a sweep of his hand, the skeleton army surged forward, charging straight at their target. Chapter 97. 1. Belt 39 copy. Just ask if you have seen it. The Lion Clan warriors fell in waves. The castle gate had been smashed open, and the skeleton warriors swept through, slaughtering every Lion Clan monster inside. The team pressed on to the desert tyrant's throne. The tyrant fixed a look of mocking disdain on the small, unassuming figure before him. Lin Moyu had never seen a gaze like that in any other dungeon. There was a strange hint of awareness in it. He felt a thrill of anticipation. A new record might be about to be set. Originally, he had come for desert fruit. When there was none, the run had turned into a grind, and a fast one at that. Lin Moyu ordered his forces to finish off the remaining mobs and laid a slow curse on the tyrant. Then he pulled back, taking up a position on a distant rooftop to watch the fight unfold. His level 21 skeleton warriors were no longer what they had been. One's 4-dimensional attribute had climbed to 13,500, and the skeleton mage's spiritual attribute had surged to 27,000. Compared to their previous levels, it was a huge leap. Their combat power had grown substantially, and their stats were now enough to dominate the tyrant. Aside from raw skill, the tyrant outmatched the skeletons. But in every other way, it was at a disadvantage. Worse, it was hopelessly outnumbered, 205 against 1. No matter how fiercely it resisted, the outcome was already decided. 10 minutes later, the tyrant collapsed before Lin Moyu, defeated and unwilling. Kill the Lion Clan tyrant. Experienced gold tier weapon, Tyrant Staff. Obtained gold tier weapon, Tyrant Longbow. Obtained gold tier armor, Tyrant Robe Type 2. Obtained gold tier armor, Tyrant Light Armor. Obtained World Boss Crystal Core. Tyrant Staff, gold tier weapon, Spirit plus 300, Physique 200, Mage skills plus 25%. Usable at level 30 or above. Tyrant Longbow, gold tier weapon, Agility 400, Constitution 100, Bow and arrow skills 25%. Usable at level 30 or above. Tyrant Robe, gold tier armor, Type Hero 2, Spirit plus 100, Physique plus 200, Physique increased by 10%. Usable at level 30 or above. Tyrant Light Armor, gold tier armor, Agility 100, Constitution 200, Constitution increased by 10%. Usable at level 30 or above. World Boss Crystal Core, the core of a world boss's crystal, can be used to craft a variety of powerful items. Lin Moyu checked his experience, 84%. It matched his estimate almost exactly. His level-up progress was roughly 10% slower than he'd hoped. Because he hadn't cleared all the monsters in the desert, he only reached 84% instead of more. He left the instance through the exit. No sooner had he stepped out of the dungeon than people swarmed around him. Earlier the bell had tolled 6 times in rapid succession, and a flood of players had poured into the dungeon hall. When the announcement flashed the new record for the Tyrant Dungeon, everyone went silent with shock. Lin Moyu, level 21, 6 hours, 11 minutes seconds. That time, it was terrifying. A record like that might not be broken in 100 years. Boss Lin, can you take me to run the dungeon again? Boss Lin, please bring me. Brother Lin, take me to the Tyrant Desert. Just one run, I need to finish my school quest. Boss Lin, a crowd of academy students pressed in around him, pleading and flattering, trying to latch onto his coattails. Most of them were ordinary students who rarely managed to form a team for the Tyrant Dungeon on their own. Now they were desperate for a chance to ride his coattails to completion. If they tried to go in piecemeal, with mismatched equipment, varying skill levels, and no unified command, 9 times out of 10, they couldn't clear it. That was why the group looked to Lin Moyu with hope written on their faces. Lin Moyu blinked, a little surprised. What task? Their explanation came at once, voices overlapping as they tried to be heard. It's a school assignment. After you enroll, the school issues a series of missions. Only by completing them can you qualify to join the independent Academy. One of the missions is to clear the Tyrant Desert Dungeon. If you can't finish it, you can buy your way through with contribution points. 50 points will clear the dungeon, but those points are nearly impossible to come by. We've all been stuck on this for ages. The Academy won't take us otherwise. Our own guild has tried to clear it too, but the failure rate is ridiculously high. We only managed to beat it once in a blue moon. We don't want EXP, gear, or materials, someone added urgently. We just need to complete the mission. They all spoke at once, laying out the situation plainly. Lin Moyu listened without interrupting. A student suddenly piped up. Lin Moyu, how come you don't know about the dungeon mission? Lin Moyu answered calmly, because I'm a freshman. I only arrived 2 days ago, and the opening ceremony isn't until the day after tomorrow. A hush fell over the crowd. Of course, he was a new registrant. The Academy releases its school missions all at once at the opening ceremony. No wonder he hadn't been assigned anything yet. Once they thought about it, everyone's astonishment doubled. This freshman had only just arrived, and yet he'd already been steamrolling dungeon missions, soloing challenge after challenge. He'd even cleared a massive raid that no one had ever soloed before. If he kept this up, he could make school history. It wasn't hard to imagine him wiping out the entire dungeon hall. Not even hell-level difficulties might stop him. Maybe only the one supersized raid would put up a real fight. Stunned into admiration, the students quickly recovered and crowded around. Boss Lin, are you short on entry points? We can chip in, someone blurted. Yeah, we can give you points, another added, eager to help. A cluster of students rushed forward, eager and almost breathless. We don't want anything else. We'll even give you extra points just to get through the mission, one said. Yeah, I'll pay in points. I'll give 1,000. I'll give 1,000 too, another added. 1,000 isn't nothing, but it's not a fortune either. Lin Moyu did the math in his head. It cost 2,500 points to swipe a single dungeon. Even if someone sat on more than 120,000 points, they'd burn through them sooner or later. He still needed points for equipment and skill scrolls, so any extra was welcome. More importantly, bringing them through the mission would net a one-time reward of 39,000 points, a very profitable trade. All right, he said after a moment, I'll take you through. 1,000 points each. But I have one condition. At once their faces lit up. Student Lin, tell us. We only need to clear the mission, someone insisted. We don't want anything else. Exactly. We're all listening, another echoed. Lin Moyu held up a hand. Good. Then one thing. If you find a desert fruit outside the ant cave, don't take it from me. The veteran students there all nodded immediately. Everyone knew how valuable those desert fruits were. This was the ultimate tool for training skills, far better than the skill training hall. It was no surprise Lin Moyu had asked for a turn. Don't worry, I won't grab it for myself, he said. I don't want the desert fruit. I just need to finish Ren Luo. Really, I only need to complete the task. The request set the crowd off. Let me go first. Pick me. I've been stuck on this task for a year. 2 years for me. No, I should go first. For a while, the hall descended into a chaotic roar as everyone clamored to be next. Lin Moyu frowned. This was getting out of hand when someone cut through the noise. Quiet. Shuhan stepped out of the crowd. Everyone line up. One person goes in at a time. Line up by how long you've held the card, he added. The longer you've had it, the earlier you go. Shuhan's plan made sense. Lin Moyu nodded and took his place in the queue. Under Shuhan's direction, the players quickly fell into order. One by one, they transferred their points to Lin Moyu and then joined his team, clearing the way for him to take his turn. Lin Moyu said to Shuhan, "Thank you. Sorry for the trouble." Shuhan chuckled. "It's nothing." He knew Lin Moyu wasn't fond of small talk, so he'd taken the initiative and accepted the job. Lin Moyu asked, "Did you finish the mission?" With a gentle smile, Shuhan replied, "All done. You can get back to your own work. Leave the rest to me." Lin Moyu nodded. "If you ever have a task, you can come to me." Shuhan grinned. "When the time comes, you're not allowed to refuse." "I won't." After forming the team, Lin Moyu received 39,000 points, bringing his total past 160,000. This kind of haul was unheard of. There were teams that carried weaker players through dungeons, usually 1 or 2 clients at a time. Top-tier groups could clear a 6-player dungeon with only 4 members, leaving 2 slots they could fill with paying customers. That was common in the dungeon halls. But gaining 39,000 points in a single run like Lin Moyu had? No one had ever seen it. Everyone entered the instance with Lin Moyu. Yellow sand churned across the sky. "Stick close to me. Don't get ahead," Lin warned. "Don't worry, we'll follow you," the team promised. "Whatever you say, we'll do it. You tell us to go east, and we'll never go west. You tell us to squat, and we'll never lie on our stomachs." Those defiant words left Lin Moyu stunned. At the same time, with nothing more than a thought, his skeleton army sprang up in full force. Chapter 98. Honestly, don't play dead. When the skeleton army materialized, a cold gust blew over the field and the temperature dropped several degrees. Bones clicked together as they rose, and a hush fell over everyone watching. "I'll go," someone blurted out, but their voice was lost in the sudden chill. "That's Boss Lin's summoning item," another said, eyes wide. "Undead summoning. No wonder they're called Necromancers." Whispers spread through the crowd. "That number. There must be hundreds. Is this Brother Lin's class? It has to be a legendary profession," someone else guessed. "I've never seen anything like it," came another voice. "Not just legendary. There are ranks beyond that. This is on another level." Estimates flew around, 200, maybe more, and they noted something else that made the hair on their necks stand up. The skeletons weren't all the same. There were warriors with shields and swords, and others that looked like mages, clutching bone staves. The idea of a single person raising an entire army stunned them into silence. A few of the more timid among the onlookers stumbled backward and, overwhelmed, dropped to the ground. The rest stayed rooted, watching the silent host begin to march forward. The formation moved with eerie precision, bone-clad feet stirring up dust as they advanced. For many of them, it was an eye-opener, one person able to field an army. The concept of forming an army with one summoning suddenly didn't sound like exaggeration. It was literal. It didn't take long for the skeletons to run into their first real test. Standing ahead, half buried in the dunes, loomed a desert ghost tree, an elite monster, super enhanced. In their eyes, it was a fearsome opponent, hardly any weaker than the bosses they'd fought in nightmare dungeons. The air tightened. The silent army and the ghostly tree faced each other, and everyone held their breath. Even a 40-person party would need at least half a minute to finish this thing, everyone thought. "The last time I teamed up for this, the desert ghost tree took us 2 minutes to bring down. This monster is brutal," someone muttered. "Its body is tough, its strength is huge. Our knights couldn't take many hits. I don't even want to think about how many of Lin Moyu's skeletons will have to die to kill it," another voice added. Most of them assumed skeletons were expendable cannon fodder. They expected a costly fight and that a few summons would fall before the tree went down. Then a skeleton warrior charged. The tree's dead branches lashed out, but the skeleton met them head-on, swinging a massive blade that cleaved through the whiplashing limbs. The knife then came down on the desert ghost tree like a bolt of lightning. At the same time, the skeletal mage let loose a barrage. Dozens of spells streaked toward the tree. With a scream, the desert ghost tree toppled to the ground. Silence followed. Everyone stood stunned, disbelief written on their faces. The system hints blinked up, confirming experience had been gained. "It's over?" someone whispered. "It only lasted 3 seconds," another voice said incredulously. "Isn't that a super-enhanced elite monster? It was killed just like that?" "My dear, how high is Brother Lin's skeleton attribute?" Lin Moyu glanced at the experience readout, less than 10,000, and couldn't help but shake his head and laugh quietly. There are wins and losses in every hunt. If he'd gone alone, he could have taken in 300,000 experience by himself. With 39 people sharing the spoils, each person only got a few thousand. Still, it wasn't all bad. In exchange, he'd earned 39,000 points, which made the trade-off worth thinking about. Points mattered to him far more than raw experience. With points, he could buy skill scrolls. Primary scrolls cost 800 points apiece, while intermediate scrolls were priced at 80,000. Without scrolls, his class would stagnate. No inherited skill books, no handed-down techniques. He had to rely on himself, and accumulating points was the fastest way to buy the skills he needed. With that decided, he pushed the group onward, determined to maximize their gains. Everyone in the party had already seen what his skeleton could do. It had casually decapitated a desert ghost tree in one clean stroke, an instant kill. Monsters of that tier were nothing to them. They pressed on, confident, until at last they reached the oasis. The skeleton warrior ran ahead with a swarm of giant desert scorpions in pursuit. Lin Moyu and the rest of the group hurried after him, the veteran players close behind. "Lin, what are you planning to do?" someone called nervously. "How are we going to handle this?" "There are hundreds of them already, and more keep coming," another added. "Are we really supposed to rely on the skeleton mages to clear them?" "It should work. I just noticed the wind and ice skeleton mages have area attacks," a hopeful voice said. Encouraged, the others kept pace with Lin Moyu, their excitement mixed with anxiety. They ran like that for 20 minutes. By then, more than 200 giant scorpions trailed them, and worry began to spread. If the skeletons fell, they'd all have to flee for their lives, and maybe even abandon the instance. Despite the tension, Lin Moyu's expression remained unreadable, and the others had no choice but to trust him. At last, they reached a range of alpine cliffs and came up to the mouth of the ant cave. There, the skeleton warrior finally stopped, turned, and engaged the giant scorpions. Experience notifications were popping up so fast that everyone stared in disbelief. The skeleton warrior's combat power was far beyond what they'd imagined. If this kept up, the giant desert scorpions would be wiped out in no time. In fact, they realized there might be no need for everyone to join the fight at all. They reached the edge of the battlefield just as Lin Moyu raised his palm. "Skill, corpse burst," he called. A thunderous boom shattered the air. Yellow sand leapt up in a towering plume and then rained down like grain. Another explosion followed, and then another, each blast sending more sand skyward until the light drizzle turned into a torrent. The sudden succession of detonations sent people scrambling. Some were so startled they fell to the ground. "Is that thunder? What was that explosion?" someone shouted. "What's going on up front?" Another asked. "Check your experience," someone else cried. "Look at your experience." The warnings answered. Experience notifications erupted across their screens as the giant desert scorpions fell in waves, crushed, torn apart, collapsing one after another. 10 blasts rang out in rapid succession before the noise finally subsided. When the dust and yellow sand dissipated and they could see again, the battlefield was silent. The desert giant scorpions were dead. Too fast. How did that happen? When we arrived, there were at least 150 giant desert scorpions. They were all dead in an instant. What was that explosion? The power. It was unreal. It's terrifying. No wonder Lin Moyu clears so quickly. That ability is something else. Lin Moyu paid their chatter no mind and pressed on. I spotted the cactus, but there were still no desert fruits on it. Bai Yuan had been right. The chance of finding desert fruit is really small. The skeletons swept up the young ants at the cave entrance, and Lin Moyu called back to the group, "Don't come in. I'll call you when I'm finished." A skeleton warrior was already charging inside. The team answered in unison, "All right, we'll wait here." "Take your time, Brother Lin. Don't rush." They'd been at it for a short while, just over an hour, and everyone was stunned. Other teams usually needed 10 or 20 hours. The difference in efficiency was staggering. What made it even harder to believe was Lin Moyu's level, only 139. Who would have thought he could clear this fast? Lin Moyu had gone into the ant cave alone. The other 39 stood outside, watching one another in silence. After more than 10 minutes of nothing, someone finally broke the stalemate. "How about IG? Go in and pull a monster." "Don't be reckless. These things aren't easy," another warned. But watching Lin Moyu, it looked simple. Maybe this one's not as bad as we thought. "He's him and we're us. Completely different," someone else said. "Everyone here's a pro. Even if there's a gap, it's not huge," came a calmer voice. They argued for a few minutes, weighing the risk, then agreed to try pulling a young ant. A handful of knights stepped forward to lead the attempt and to shore up the group's defense. They slipped into the cave through a different entrance than the one Lin Moyu had used, moving carefully. They hadn't been in long before they came sprinting back, 2 young ants in tow. "Accidentally pulled 2, one knight shouted. "Nurse, get ready to heal. Mages, warriors, archers, prepare to fight." The knights barked as they raced back into the healer's skill range. Then they turned and engaged, hacking and casting at the ants. At the same time, they activated their signature ability, Provoke, drawing the larvae's attention and forcing the creatures to focus entirely on the knights. Everyone unleashed their skills at the young ants. The insects swarmed back, focusing on the nearest knight. With a single thunderous blow, he was knocked off his feet and sent sprawling. The force rattled his bones. "What a hit! Healer, heal!" someone shouted. The healer rushed over and patched him up, but the ants struck again and sent him flying once more. "I'm moving. Why are they so strong?" he wheezed. "DPS. Where's the DPS?" another player shouted. "Stop shouting and just hit it." Qian Majiao snapped. "Hold the monsters. This is our fight. Keep doing damage." The knight could only stare. He could see a rain of attacks hitting the young ants, yet the creatures barely flinched. The strikes looked like nothing more than tickles. The other knight was no better off. That's when it hit him. Just because Lin Moyu could handle these fights with ease didn't mean everyone could. Teams differed in level, gear, and skill, and there was no coordination between them. Of course it was going to be hard. After several minutes of grinding and finally getting their act together, they managed to finish off the two young ants. The knight sagged to the floor, chest heaving. "This fight is brutal," he gasped. "These monsters, they're twisted, harder than any dungeon I've ever run." "Of course," another voice replied. "That's why this place is a 40-man raid. Big dungeons aren't meant to be easy." "Just stay still," someone else warned. "Don't move. Wait for Brother Lin to give the order." "I won't move even if they kill me," the knight said stubbornly. "There were only 2 of them before. If a third shows up, we'll get wiped, no doubt about it." Lin Moyu caught the hint instantly. Years of experience told him what the monsters were probably trying to do. He told himself, let them make their mistakes. It's not my problem. Still, he found he couldn't stay idle. Chapter 99. Are you tired? I have medicine. After getting mauled by those 2 young ants, the 39 survivors finally quieted down. No one dared act rashly anymore. If those 2 attackers had been grown worker ants instead of the smaller ones, their whole group would have been wiped out. Thinking about it made everyone feel foolish for having been so complacent before. You couldn't just sit and wait to be rescued, either. Only the people who'd paid for priority clearance could afford to take that kind of chance. He's been in there over 10 minutes. How come he hasn't killed a single monster? Someone snapped in chat. That's obvious. He's not killing them one by one, another replied. He's dragging groups together. The efficiency of pulling and AoE killing is crazy. As they argued, the system notifications began to ping like a storm. Experience points stacked up faster than anyone had seen before. One of the messages even showed a level up. I told you, he's gathering monster packs, said a third. Yeah, compared to solo kills, it's much faster, a fourth chimed in. Looks like he's heading for the boss spawn, someone guessed. I heard there's a queen ant around here. Supposedly she's brutal. Right, I've heard that too, came the reply, thin with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. The chat buzzed with speculation as the onlookers waited and watched the combat log cascade with experience gains. Whatever strategy the lone player was using, it was clearly working, and it was making everyone nervous about what might come next. Compared to a boss of the same level, a nightmare-tier dungeon is tougher than the Ant Queen, someone observed. The problem is if your damage isn't high enough, the queen will keep healing herself, and you'll never kill her. With his output, though, that's not an issue. Lin Moyu didn't know anything about the queen's self-healing. In his experience, the Ant Queen only ever got one chance to use her curl skill. It never lasted until the end of its cooldown, because she was dead long before then. If his attacks had been even stronger, she might not have even had the chance to curl once. This was his 3rd time through the fight, and he was already familiar with her motions. Her curled stance had become like an old acquaintance's greeting. Everything unfolded exactly as it should. Around him in the ant cave, people argued about how long he would take. Some guessed half an hour, others said 20 minutes, some even 40. Each had a different theory. 20 minutes in, another series of system prompts appeared. The screen flashed 570, and this time the effect lasted noticeably longer. They stared at the system message in astonishment. Wow, there's so much weird stuff happening. No wonder his leveling's been so fast, another voice said. This is unbelievable. The experience each of us got was only 1/40th of the total, someone pointed out. But the total XP was enormous. Imagine if all that experience were funneled to one person. If he keeps grinding like that, going from level 20 to 30 could take less than a month. No, it might not even take half a month, someone else corrected. The XP kept piling up and the notifications never stopped coming. For more than half an hour, the alerts trickled in until, finally, all the mobs in the ant cave were cleared. 1 minute later, they received the system alert that the queen had been killed. In about an hour, the whole ant cave had been swept clean. What had made the fight last that long, they realized, was the queen's special tactics. She could burrow, summon waves of ants, and heal herself. If she hadn't had that burrowing ability, Lin Moyu could have ended the fight in at most 5 minutes. A few minutes after the last notification, a skeleton rose and strolled ahead, motioning them to follow. It led them out of the ant cave and over a ridge into the lion tribe's desert territory. The difference was immediate, the bright, open sun of the desert versus the cool, shadowed air of the cave. The two environments felt like they belonged to entirely different worlds. The air grew thick and heavy, stifling and hot as they drew closer. Before long, a magnificent fortress came into view. "This is Leonine Castle," someone murmured. At its center stood the Lion Clan's king, a world-class powerhouse, the clan's tyrant. Outside the walls, countless Lion Tribe warriors had already mustered. The skeletons had charged ahead and were locked in brutal combat with the lion warriors near the gate. Boom! An explosion tore through the ranks, and the lion side suffered heavy losses. Lin Moyu pressed forward at a blistering pace. This time, there was no mistaking his ability. "He detonated a corpse," someone shouted. "He set off a corpse and wiped out all the nearby monsters." That skill is terrifying. Lin Moyu didn't mind that people had seen what he could do. His abilities had already been demonstrated in the battle arena, and in 2 days, when freshmen from around the world arrived at the academy, everyone would know. He had never intended to hide anything. If others knew, so be it. Outside the city, the lion warriors were quickly slaughtered, and the skeletons surged toward the castle gate as arrows rained down. The sight made everyone's brows lift. "There's a siege tactic like that?" "He just hit the gate directly. Why bother with siege engines?" "Probably too lazy to set them up. Those skeletons are insane, high attack and high defense. Honestly, it's just that his class is overpowered." From start to finish, Lin Moyu kept shocking them. First the instant kill monsters, then the mass slaughter, and now skeletons battering down the city gate. Everything was effortless and blunt, just a straight-up steamroll. Within minutes the gate was smashed, and the lion warriors inside were cut down in an instant. "Don't go down there. Watch from the wall. Anyone who goes down will die." This time everyone complied, clustering on the battlements and not daring to approach. In the center of the city, on a raised throne, sat the Lion Clan tyrant. "So that's the Lion Clan tyrant," someone murmured. "I finally saw him." They had only heard about it before. Now they finally saw it in the flesh. As expected of a world-class boss, it looks terrifying. They say a team of 40 would need at least a few hours to take it down. I don't know how long it'll take Lin Moyu to deal with it. It shouldn't be long. They exchanged uncertain looks. Lin Moyu seemed far too calm. The dungeon's danger didn't appear to faze him at all. He stood back, motionless, while skeleton warriors and skeleton mages streamed forward and fought as if on their own. He simply watched, almost bored. Everyone watching was stunned. How could anyone treat a world boss like this? It felt like a deliberate slight. The skeletons swarmed the tyrant, throwing themselves at it in relentless waves. The tyrant's giant axe carved through them, sweeping handfuls of bones aside, but more skeletons rose to take their place. Off to the side, a skeleton mage held its ground like a bulwark, unleashing a steady barrage of magic that rained down on the battlefield. "That tyrant's nothing. I could take it down twice," someone joked. "If you want to die, go ahead. You're far too weak. You wouldn't last a minute in that dungeon," came another voice. All right, I'll shut up," a third said, half laughing. Everyone knew how brutal the tyrants were. With ordinary gear, anyone who tried to face one would be crushed. Most people were watching from a safe distance, hoping rather than expecting anything. 15 minutes later, the tyrant lay dead at Lin Moyu's feet. The moment it fell, all 39 players who held the dungeon instance received the same notification on their communicators. Mission completed. The chat exploded. Thanks, Mr. Lin. Boss, the task is finally done. You're amazing. Truly amazing. Many of them were crying with relief. Some had been stuck on this quest for a year, 2 years. The weight of that stuckness broke into pure, unfiltered joy. Lin Moyu watched them celebrate, a small, almost gentle smile on his face. He understood why they were so elated. Those who could get into Xiashuo Academy were prodigies, talented, driven, and painfully aware of how long it could take to clear a single obstacle. Standing out on the entrance exams used to make him the envy of everyone. But once he arrived at Xiajing Academy, that glow faded. He was just one ordinary student among many. Students came from every college and department, many of them having enjoyed far better training and resources since childhood. They were simply stronger. The halo of genius disappeared, and a deep sense of loss set in for a lot of people. A few true prodigies did break away from the crowd. They were pulled into independent colleges, groomed, and eventually recruited by the top schools, becoming the academy's real stars. The rest, the ordinary students, were left to grind through each assignment and figure out how to survive. Everything changed in that moment. With limited resources, the Academy's priority was to identify the real Tianjiao, the genuine prodigies, and concentrate support on them. It was better to have one top expert than 100 mediocre professionals. When the training mission ended, everyone filed out of the instance one by one. The loot dropped by the final boss didn't matter to most of them. They were only concerned with completing the task. This time they didn't set a new record. It took them nearly 7 hours to clear the dungeon. Word of their success spread like wildfire. When they emerged into the dungeon hall, a long line of people had formed, stretching from the entrance of the Tyrant Desert dungeon all the way out into the hall. Lin Moyu was stunned. How are there so many people? Hundreds of them. Shuhan smiled gently. News travels. Those who were stuck in the dungeon called their friends. Once a bunch of people show up together, they can pull in a lot of reward points, easily several 100,000. Lin Moyu glanced at his watch. 2 runs back-to-back today, more than 10 hours in total. He could see Shuhan reading his thoughts. The other man produced a small bottle and held it out with a knowing look. Tired? Take this. Fatigue potion. Restores physical stamina and removes fatigue. Effect lasts 24 hours. Long-term use not recommended. Shuhan smiled. If you take the fatigue potion, you won't get tired. That said, I wouldn't recommend using it all the time, only occasionally. You won't usually find it in the exchange. He added, this is the pharmacist's private formula, so it's not easy to buy elsewhere. It's 500 points a bottle. Want a few? He beamed as he said it, his large, attractive eyes narrowing into crescent slits, every bit the practiced salesman. Chapter 100. If you dare touch him, I'll tear down the dungeon hall. 2 back-to-back dungeon runs that stretched over 13 hours had left him exhausted. On Shuhan's recommendation, Lin Moyu had bought 6 bottles of fatigue potion and downed 1. The effect hit like a soak in a hot spring, all the wariness washed away, sharper and more alert than after a long sleep. Shuhan blinked. So? Not bad, right? It's really good, Lin Moyu said. Shuhan grinned. 500 points well spent. He glanced at the growing crowd. Now you can keep taking people to the end. There are tons of them waiting. The waiting line only kept getting longer. New players kept joining, and each successful run earned 39,000 points, incredibly fast. Lin Moyu had planned to invest his points. Experience was secondary. What he really wanted was another desert fruit so he could max out his skills. A moment later, he queued up another group of 39 and led them into the dungeon. Those 39 disappeared from the lobby, but the line didn't shrink. If anything, it kept swelling. Word spread fast. Those who had passed the basic exams were already calling their friends, urging them to come quickly and sign up as healers. Don't miss this chance, they warned. It might not come again. At the same time, more details about Lin Moyu began circulating. The rumors reached Bailey College, and Bailey Sheng was livid. He kept rapping his knuckles on the stone table, eyes flashing with irritation, as if trying to work something out aloud. So it's a corpse-based group-killing summon, he muttered. a skeleton army with enhanced attributes. Which means, he continued, voice cold, if we can limit his summoning ability or deny him corpses, Lin Moyu becomes useless. He paced, analyzing the information with thinly veiled hatred. Every trade had its weaknesses. He told himself this was Lin Moyu's. What ate at him wasn't just professional curiosity. Lin Moyu had humiliated him publicly and sullied Bailey College's reputation. If Lin Moyu hadn't appeared, the new record should have belonged to Bailey College, maybe even earned them the tyrant's favor and the coveted boss jewelry. Bailey Sheng felt robbed, but despite his anger and the breadth of his influence, his rank and position constrained him. He could plan and grumble, but there was little he could do directly to stop Lin Moyu. Bailey Sheng felt a little envious of Lin Moyu's career, envious of his skill. Lin Moyu was frighteningly good. After a moment's thought, Bailey Sheng said, "Send for Ling Zhen from Qianlong Academy. Tell him I need to speak with him." In the dungeon hall, Lin Moyu finished another dungeon run after 7 hours. He drank a fatigue potion and, to his surprise, felt no weariness at all. If anything, he was more energetic. The potion banished both physical exhaustion and mental fatigue. It was impressively effective, and the alchemist who made it must be very talented. He did the math. There were still over 30 hours left before the opening ceremony. If he kept up his pace, he could clear 5 more waves. That would be almost 200,000 points. On top of that, there was a decent chance of stumbling across a desert fruit roughly once every 5 runs. Glancing around the hall, he noticed Shuhan had already left. Maybe I should rest, he thought for a moment. Then he shook his head and kept going. Lin Moyu continued to grind for points and loot, run after run. The day before the opening ceremony, new students streamed into Xiajing Academy from across the country. Upperclassmen were on hand to meet them, show them to their dorms, and give guided tours of the campus. Xiasui was part of a small group led by a senior, taking in the academy's gardens and towers. As the premier institution in the Shensha Empire, Xiajing Academy was vast and impressive. Everywhere she looked, there was an air of refinement that set it apart from ordinary schools. After the tour, she returned to the dormitory. Unlike Lin Moyu, who clearly had means, Xiasui couldn't afford Lux, Yuri's. Because she was training as a mage and needed quiet for meditation, a 4-person room would be far too noisy. A single room would be ideal, but far too costly. She settled on a 2-person room as a compromise. Her campus account held fewer than 10,000 points, so she had to be careful about spending. The double room cost 1,000 points a month, enough to make her swallow hard, but it was the best balance between solitude and expense she could manage. She had scored 7,600 points on the final exam, and a provincial second-place bonus added another 2,000, so Shishe left with a total of 9,600 points. As they were leaving, her father, Xia Dongyang, kept telling her to be frugal with them. "Don't spend points where you can use gold coins," he warned. "Points are hard to earn." She nodded and thought about the school exchange. There were so many nice things in the shop, but they all cost points. She almost wished she could afford them. Around her, students were gossiping. "I really envy that guy. He's got more than 30,000 points. I wonder how many points the national champion received. It must be huge." Principal Lu said Lin Moyu arrived at Xiajing Academy a few days ago. "I don't know how he's doing. With his ability, he should be fine. National number 1. Really impressive." When Xiashui remembered Lin Moyu's showing in the battle space, she still found it hard to believe. She felt genuinely happy for him and had no interest in competing. There was simply too big a gap between them. You can admit defeat in your heart, but never with your mouth. Don't worry, he'll definitely show up at the opening ceremony tomorrow. The dorm door opened and a roommate stepped in. Xiashui's face lit up. "It's you." Zuomei blinked for a moment, then her expression brightened. What a coincidence! There was something comforting about sharing a room with someone from the same home province. Meanwhile, Lin Moyu ran the instance again and again in his head. The clan tyrant kept reappearing before him. He'd practically wiped out the desert tyrant single-handedly. If leaderboard slots weren't limited to 1 entry per person, he'd be 3 without breaking a sweat, or even untouchable. He'd been camped in the dungeon hall for 2 days. leading groups through 5 clears already. Now he was setting up for the 6th and his last run. By his calculations, finishing this run would put him just before dawn. The opening ceremony wasn't until 9 a.m., and when he checked the queue, there were exactly 35 people waiting. If everything went as planned, this round would finish right in time for the ceremony. Once the points were collected and the teams formed, everyone was instantly transferred into the dungeon. For Lin Moyu, it was his 8th trip into the Desert of Tyrants. Apart from the first time, when he'd found that odd desert fruit, he hadn't had any luck on the other 6 runs. Hopefully this time, he thought. Back in Bai Yuan's small courtyard, Ning Tairen sat fanning his beard, eyes narrowed as he looked at Bai Yuan. "That kid you like is getting out of hand," he complained. Bai Yuan blinked. "What do you mean? Lin Moyu's usually steady as a rock. He wouldn't do anything reckless." Meng Anwen, standing nearby, poured a cup of tea and handed it to Ning. "Old Ning, calm down. Drink your tea and tell us slowly." Ning huffed. He set up in the dungeon hall, charging people to escort them through the Desert of Tyrants. Bai Yuan shrugged. "Isn't that normal? People have always paid to be taken through dungeons." "What's not normal is the number," Ning snapped. He led 39 people through. Those players who'd been stuck on their tasks finally got through because of him. Bai Yuan laughed and slapped his thigh. "Relax, old man. We'll sort it out. First things first. How much is he charging?" "You can't be so soft on them." Ning Tairen glared, eyes wide. "I'm furious with you. You know exactly why the Academy assigns these missions. The school uses them, especially the large dungeon tasks, to separate the exceptional from the mediocre. If someone gets stuck on a dungeon mission, it's a sign of their own problems. They're not strong enough, or they can't handle their role. There's always a flaw." Bai Yuan lifted his teacup and took a calm sip. "Of course I know that. So what? The rules are the rules, and nowhere does the school forbid taking someone. I acted entirely within those rules. Ning, show me one single regulation Lin Moyu has broken." Ning's beard bristled, and his brows drew together. He opened his mouth, but no rule came to mind. He couldn't name a single infraction. Bai Yuan set his cup down slowly. "I've been unhappy with these kinds of assignments for a long time," he said, voice steady. "There are so many promising kids who get stuck simply because they can't communicate and can't find a team," one of them said. "Don't tell me you didn't know that," another replied. "Kid Lin did the right thing," someone added. "The university system is broken. It really needs reform." Ning Tairen's face went red. Anger flared under his skin. Meng Anwen only sipped his tea and answered quietly. "The institution's system is ancient. A structure set up centuries ago is overdue for reform." Ning tried to calm himself with 3 cups of tea, but it didn't help. He pushed his chair back and snapped, "You two are impossible." Bai Yuan let out a short laugh. "At my age, my temper hasn't changed a bit. And remember, you promised me. If anyone so much as lays a hand on Lin Moyu, I'll tear this place down." Ning's mouth twitched twice. He knew Bai wasn't bluffing. If he hadn't known Lin Moyu was someone Bai intended to train, he would have confronted him long ago. With that thought burning, Ning left in a huff. Meng Anwen watched him go and chuckled. "Old man Ning, some things really never change." Bai Yuan waved it off. "Nations can change, but a person's nature is hard to alter. As for an old man like me, there's only one person in the whole world who can handle me." Meng Anwen, of course, knew exactly whom he meant and couldn't help smiling knowingly.